Loeb. Harvard professor Avi Loeb and his team have undertaken a fascinating quest involving the potential discovery of alien technology fragments. Their journey takes us all the way back to 2014, when a meteor landed in the waters of Papua New Guinea. The pieces they collected from this mysterious visitor have raised intriguing questions. The US Space Command released a statement saying that there is a 99.999% certainty that these materials originated from another solar system. This revelation prompted a thorough investigation, with the government providing a 10-kilometer radius for the likely landing zone. Their calculations yielded a potential path for the meteor that remarkably aligned with the government's projected landing zone. They set sail, traversing the meteor's projected trajectory. An innovative approach involved combing the ocean floor using a sled with magnets attached. Their findings were nothing short of astonishing. They unearthed 10 nearly perfect spheres resembling metallic marbles. Under the microscope, these objects displayed a captivating array of colors: gold, blue, brown, and some even bearing a resemblance to miniature Earths. The composition analysis revealed that these minuscule spheres were mostly composed of iron, with traces of silicon, magnesium, and titanium. What sets these findings apart from any other space rocks cataloged by NASA is their high material strength. The meteor was calculated to have moved at an astounding 60 kilometers per second, faster than almost all of the stars in the vicinity of our sun. The combination of material strength and speed has led Avi Loeb to entertain the possibility that these fragments might be remnants of a spacecraft from another civilization or from some unknown advanced technology. The research into these objects is still in its early stages, and the team aims to discover whether these objects are of artificial or natural origin. If they are natural, it would provide insight into the materials that exist beyond our solar system. If they're artificial, the theories and possibilities are staggering, as the objects would be hinting at the possibility of extraterrestrial visitors from planets far beyond what we know. Many believe that these spheres are just the beginning of discovery and may eventually guide scientists to a more substantial find. The spheres are crucial in helping locate and understand any significant remnants of the meteor, which could offer further answers surrounding its origin. Whatever answers are found will inevitably lead to an incredible new sense of understanding of what is past our known universe, whether it's found to be a rock or a strange technological artifact. Number 4. The Voynich Manuscript. Often dubbed as the world's most mysterious book, the Voynich Manuscript has baffled scholars, cryptographers, and supernatural enthusiasts for centuries. This 15th century book is filled with peculiar, undecipherable texts alongside intricate illustrations of unknown plants, strange creatures, and unidentifiable symbols. A wide range of theories have emerged in an attempt to decode its origin and purpose. One of the leading theories believes that the manuscript is a hoax, created to deceive anyone who finds it. The intricate, unique script has led some to believe it's an elaborate cipher, but despite extensive efforts from many people and linguistic experts, no one has been able to crack it. The drawings of unfamiliar plants have led some to think that it might be a botanical or medical text, containing knowledge for herbal remedies or alchemical recipes. Other theories suggest that the Voynich manuscript could be part of a genuine but now lost language. Some researchers believe it may have been written in a natural language and then encoded for secrecy. This idea is supported by the manuscript's linguistic characteristics, which appear consistent with language patterns. However, without a key to decipher the text, this remains speculative. There's also the theory, my favorite theory by the way, that believes the book belonged to extraterrestrial beings who spoke a completely unknown language, and the drawings and recipe depictions represent objects and wildlife that humans have never experienced. Why did the aliens leave this book with us? I'm not sure, but if this book teaches us anything, it's that we certainly do not understand aliens in the slightest, so we definitely wouldn't be able to assume their motive and reasoning. If the book is of alien origin, it would contain mounds of insight for what alien planets or languages look like.
Number 3 on this list is alien bacteria. One of the biggest knocks against any argument associated with aliens is that our solar system hasn't shown any signs of life except for Earth. This isn't necessarily true though, based on a recent study that has come out in regards to Venus. Venus is one heck of a planet and certainly not somewhere that I would want to live. The storms are mighty, the temperature is way too hot, and acid regularly rains down from the sky. Not the ideal location if you ask me. One thing that Venus is also home to is a rare poisonous gas, phosphine. Now you're probably thinking, well, how would a poisonous gas indicate any signs of alien life? Wouldn't it indicate the opposite? And in most cases you might be right. However, phosphine is almost always linked to the presence of life. On Earth, phosphine is produced by microorganisms as they digest organic matter. This is why we consider it to be a biosignature and an indicator of life. Venus is certainly different from Earth, and we can't simply apply what makes sense here to Venus without asking some questions. However, this is a strong indicator from scientists that life is certainly possible from Venus. We've also seen before that Mars might contain some life. These two planets may not house the typical alien life that you may picture in your brain, but a bacteria from Venus or Mars is just as alien as somebody flying down in a UFO. Is it not possible that somehow, through our extensive history, debris from Venus or debris from Mars landed on Earth and developed life here? Maybe we never even realized that this life was alien to begin with. Number 2 on this list is microorganisms. We just talked about how Venus could be the host to life, bacteria or other small organisms that we've yet to identify. Well, one of the biggest arguments against aliens living among us is that we haven't seen them yet. Sure, there have been some stories here and there, but nothing on a major and global scale. What if we aren't looking properly though? What if our understanding of life doesn't match with what an alien life form is? Scientists have thought deeply about this possibility and what this could mean. This life, seeing as it would not compute with our definition of life, would actually live in what experts refer to as a shadow biosphere. Now, this shadow biosphere isn't some alternate dimension or ghost realm, but it's a biosphere with organisms that have a completely different biochemistry than we're familiar with. We're made up of carbon and nitrogen, but why are we automatically assuming that an alien would be made up of this as well? It could be just as likely that alien beings are made up of other elements. If this was the case, then it's most likely on a microscopic scale, and that's why we haven't been able to recognize them yet. We currently have a very limited way of studying microbes, and we need to be testing for a very specific microbe to know what it is. If we aren't searching for the proper microbe though, then it's very likely we could miss it. A lot of scientists have gotten on board with this shadow biosphere train and talked about its legitimacy. Once again, this isn't damning proof that there are aliens out there, but it does mean that there isn't damning proof against them either. Just because we don't see alien life, it doesn't mean that it's not here. Number 1 on this list is the 2004 UFO sightings. Now, I just used this point in a previous video called Top 5 Scary Discoveries the Government Doesn't Want You to Know About, and I do hate reusing the same point, but it just has to be included in this video as well. For those who aren't aware, the 2004 UFO sightings happened very close to San Diego by the United States Navy. These sightings were by multiple people and even caught on video. Just like in our last top 5 video, I want to play some of the footage so you guys can see what I'm referring to here. Those videos were caught by the US Navy and weren't released to the public until years after it happened. As you can see in those clips, the UFO that is flying through the sky doesn't look like anything man-made at all. The way it moves through the air is unlike anything we've been able to build. For instance, one of the Navy officers reported seeing it cruise at 60,000 feet and then immediately dropping to only 50 feet above the sea. It did this without making a sonic boom and did it almost instantly. That defies our current understanding of flying objects and leads a lot of people to believe this was from another intelligent species. Now, no one is sure if this object was being piloted by some sort of alien or if it was an alien probe operating by itself. I should also note that a UFO sighting isn't undeniable proof of alien life. It might just be something that we don't understand. However, the way that it flies through space has got to make us wonder. If something is flying through our air like that and it's that advanced, is it possible that something like that could have landed without us knowing? I think that might be a fair assumption. And if that's possible, then is it also possible that some sort of alien creature got out of said object and is now living among us? Frankly, I think that's also a fair assumption too. We obviously don't know for sure, but I think that this footage is some of the clearest proof that aliens living among us might be a reality.
Number 5, Alien Task Force. In July of 2022, a government-aligned UAP organization was created, the AARO. Or the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, directed by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. It's the government lead for all UAP-related anomalies. The purpose of ARO is summarized in their mission and vision statements, which say their goals are to minimize technical and intelligence surprise by synchronizing scientific, intelligence, and operational detection, identification, attribution, and mitigation of unidentified anomalous phenomena in the vicinity of national security areas. Vision statement is, unidentified anomalous phenomena are effectively and efficiently detected, tracked, analyzed, and managed by way of normalized DoD, intelligence community, and civil business practices, by adherence to the highest scientific and intelligence tradecraft standards, and with the greatest transparency and shared awareness. A lot. ARO reviews reports of UAPs and has received hundreds of reports. Dr. Kirkpatrick estimates that they receive 50 to 100 reports each month. They investigate each and every video and report using their scientific resources. The ARO reports to Deputy Defense Secretary Kathleen Hicks. It is the first government office to be tasked with synchronizing efforts across the DoD and the interagency to collect, report, and analyze UAPs. They are taking a collaborative, objective, data-driven approach to their mission. The ARO has a website that anyone can visit to check out all of this information for themselves. There are countless videos of UAP sightings posted to the government-backed website. They are also working on a government personnel sighting report program for current and former government employees who may have knowledge of UAPs. ARO replaced the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, UAPT, which only ran from 2019 to 2021. I personally think that the ARO is pretty cool. I mean, oftentimes alien conspiracists are shamed for not believing in science, but having an accomplished physicist show so much passion and determination for getting answers reminds us all what science is really about. It's about understanding the worlds around us, asking questions, making theories, and of course, staying curious. Number 4, government-owned UAPs. In July of 2023, 3 former military officials entered a Congress hearing and shook the minds of hundreds of people. David Grush told the panel that he was absolutely certain the government was in possession of UAPs. David Grush is a decorated Afghanistan soldier and a former Air Force intelligence officer who worked at the NGA, which is the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and at the NRO, which is the National Reconnaissance Office. From 2019 to 2021, he was the NRO representative of the UAPT. Remember, the organization that came before RO? A lot of letters. David was the co-lead for UAP analysis for the NGA. He assisted in drafting the National Defense Authorization Act of 2023, which includes provisions for the reporting of UFOs, including whistleblower protections and exemptions to non-disclosure orders and agreements. So clearly, he's a pretty accomplished man, and a man who is extremely knowledgeable of the events and conversations that are taking place in government settings, especially surrounding UAPs and Inhumans. David claimed that he was informed multi-decade Pentagon program that sought to locate, collect, and reconstruct UAPs. He interviewed over 40 people in 4 years and has come to the conclusion that the government is currently in possession of UAP. He said he actually knew the exact location of the technology, as the information was provided to him, the Inspector General, and some was provided to the intelligence committees. David claims that the program is funded above congressional oversight, being bankrolled by a misappropriation of funds. When asked if that meant there was money being taken out of other programs, yes, I have specific knowledge of that. David was unable to release more information regarding the funding, as he said it was classified. He stated that even though he didn't have any first-hand experience with UAPs, he knows several colleagues who have encountered and even been injured by them. The entire hearing was extremely telling. A lot of crazy revelations came to light, but UAPs weren't the only thing the government was accused of possessing and hiding, and they definitely weren't the most interesting thing either, which brings us into our next point.
Number 3, Edgar Mitchell. Edgar Dean Mitchell was a U.S. Navy officer, aviator, test pilot, engineer, NASA astronaut, and of course, a ufologist. Ufology is the pseudo term for somebody who studies the UFO phenomenon. I don't think there's a degree you can get that in. If so, I'm signing up. What school? What school, sorry? He was the lunar module pilot of the Apollo 14 in 1971 and spent 9 hours working on the lunar surface. He was the 6th person to walk on the moon. Yeah, he was walking while Warden was up there drifting in the currents of space. Mitchell publicly expressed his opinions and that he was sure that there were thousands of UFOs recorded since the early 1940s belonging to other planets. Thousands. Dateline NBC conducted an interview with Mitchell in 1996. He talked about meeting with officials from 3 different countries who claimed that they had met extraterrestrials in person. Quote, "The evidence for alien contact was very strong and classified by governments, who were covering up visitations and existence of alien bodies in places such as Roswell, New Mexico." Mitchell's book, The Way of the Explorer, discusses his journey. In 2004, he told the St. Petersburg Times that the US government was studying alien bodies and that this group had specifically stopped briefing US presidents since the 1960s. He said, quote, "We all know that UFOs are real. Now, the question is, where do they come from?" In 2008, Mitchell then was interviewed and claimed that Roswell crash was in fact the aliens that had contacted humans several times, but that the government had hidden the truth for more than 60 years. Scary stuff, scary stuff. He sadly passed in 2016. If we just reread the credentials alone, just one more time. Number 2, James McDivitt. James Alton McDivitt is an American test pilot, Air Force pilot, engineer, and NASA astronaut who flew in both the Gemini and Apollo programs. After graduating first in his class with a Bachelor of Science degree in Aeronautical Engineering, he qualified as a test pilot at the Air Force. In 1962, McDivitt was selected by NASA for the Gemini 4 mission. In 1965, he saw, filmed, and photographed an object which approached the Gemini 4 as they were orbiting Earth. Over Hawaii, a craft of some sort. The UFO had a long arm sticking out of it. Here's what Major James McDivitt said. "I was flying with Ed White. He was sleeping at the time, so I don't have anybody to verify this story, but we were drifting in space when suddenly an object appeared in the window. It's a cylindrical object, white. It had a long arm that stuck out of the side. The film was sent back to NASA and reviewed by some NASA film technicians. One of them selected what he thought was what they were talking about, at least before I had the chance to review it, and it was not the picture. It was a picture of a sun reflection on the window. So what were the pictures that he was talking about?" In 1975, McDivitt said, "I never made a big deal out of it. It was something I definitely couldn't identify. It looked like a beer can with a pencil sticking out of it. Yeah, I would eventually give up on that too if those were my credentials and people were like, yeah, right, James." When somebody has like 25 years of designing and flying space shuttles around, when they say, "Hey guys, I'm seeing something up here," it's not like, "Oh, James, clean those old specs, would you? Yuck, yuck." Houston, we have a problem. And number 1, Gordon Cooper. Leroy Gordon Cooper Jr., an American aerospace engineer, test pilot, US Air Force pilot, and the youngest of the 7 original astronauts in Project Mercury, the first human space program in the United States. You know the pictures. It looks like they're wearing a tinfoil suit, you know? Old school, old school. After service as a fighter pilot in World War II, he qualified as a test pilot in 1956 and then was selected as an astronaut in 1959. In 1963, Cooper piloted the longest and last Mercury spaceflight, Mercury Atlas 9. 34 hours in space. The first American to spend an entire day in space, the first person to sleep in space, and the last American launched on a solo orbit mission. In Cooper's autobiography, Leap of Faith, co-authored by Bruce Henderson, he recounted his experiences with the Air Force and NASA and an alleged UFO conspiracy. Cooper claimed to have seen his first UFO while flying over Germany, then saw them land in a dry lake bed. Cooper claimed up until his death that the US was indeed covering up UFOs. He said that there were hundreds of reports made by his fellow pilots, many coming from the military pilots on radar. In his memoirs, Cooper wrote that he had seen unexplained aircrafts tons in his career, and that in 1978 he actually testified before the United Nations on the topic. He sadly passed in 2004. He was such a strong advocate for disclosure, and all of these astronauts are remembered as putting their neck and name out on the line for some truth. But I mean, those UFO enthusiasts, huh? They're all wackos, right? Right? Number 5, Leland Melvin. American engineer and now retired NASA astronaut Leland Melvin has spent hundreds of hours in space. Literally hundreds. Leland holds 4 honorary doctorates for his service in education, the sciences, and philanthropy. Doctorates. I'm just saying that before the comments start rolling in saying he's just another wacko. He's crazy. They're not wackos, people. Any of them. They've been screened so many times by so many people with so many tests, they have to be damn well near perfect before going up on or in NASA's budget. Before his career with NASA, Leland was actually All-American for football. Detroit Lions, Toronto Argos. Guy made the NFL and then said, you know what? I think I'm gonna be an astronaut. Like, give this guy a Netflix movie, would ya? He was selected by NASA in 1998 after getting injured with a football career. Guy goes from the turf to working at NASA Langley Center. This guy's put in time, both down here and up there. Mission after mission with NASA. He's got quite the practice at the whole floating around thing. When Leland was pressed about otherworldly visitors and his ideas about the cosmos, he said this when he was working up in orbit. He had seen something translucent, curved and organic looking when he was working with fellow astronaut Randy Bresnik. The pair of them, called down to NASA to ask what it could be. NASA's official response was, probably ice. Yeah, nice and specific there, Houston. Thank you for that. When has NASA ever said probably? Melvin dismissed this and figured it was NASA's explanation to just cover it up. Like, who's more qualified here? That's all I'm asking. When the most qualified people are like, yeah, I can't tell if that's frozen water or a full-on mothership, Houston. Either they shouldn't be up there at all, or we need some more Windex on those windows there, NASA. Huh? Number 4, Ivan Wagner. As always, if you dig what we do here at Top 5 Scary, make sure you hit that like button or comment down below. It really helps the channel out. Have you ever seen a UFO out there? Yeah, you. Have you seen one? Comment down below with some details about your experiences. I know I have. Twice now. Hence the obsession with all this stuff. Those Reddit rabbit holes, boy oh boy. Speaking of falling into a wormhole of conspiracy and who said what, astronaut Ivan Wagner, or I should say cosmonaut Ivan Wagner, since he's Russian by birth, and although he's bunking up with some roomies up there in the ISS, he was on the ISS as a first timer just back in 2020. Does NASA initiate rookies up there? Like pull pranks on the newbies? Like no gravity, just unbuckle you while you sleep, flow you out, you know? He and fellow Russian Anatoly Ivanishin were working up there alongside Chris Cassidy, the American commander of said expedition. When Wagner was orbiting the Earth, he might have captured some footage of UFOs, better known as UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. It's the jargon nowadays. The aurora lights behind Earth's beautiful curves was being recorded from the ISS when he saw a string of really weird lights moving in a really weird way. He labeled the video Space Guests. Wagner tweeted the vid, which apparently shows the aurora australis near Antarctica, and then all of a sudden this blob of organized lights just cruises on over the globe. Looks like a blob of like glitter just trucking across space. Like, what is that? Of course NASA didn't follow up. Like, what are they gonna say? Oh yeah, those are stars that move and blink, I think. I mean, no? Space junk. Yeah, space debris and swamps and things. Also, what a lame excuse. Space junk? Okay, so you're saying there's lots of litter up there, that's what you're saying? That's what just zipped over my house silently, defying gravity and lasered up my cow? Yeah, I don't think so, NASA. Number 3, Chris Hadfield. Retired Canadian astronaut, engineer, fighter pilot, and musician. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Hadfield flew 2 missions and also served as commander on the International Space Station. Before his career as an astronaut, he served in the Canadian Armed Forces for 25 years as an air commander fighter pilot. So he has the credentials to say the least. In 1992, Hadfield was accepted into the Canadian astronaut program. He first flew in space in 1995, and since then, he says he's seen tons of stuff up there just zipping around that even a man with all those credentials says he can't explain. Quote, I've seen countless things in the sky, but he has a pretty cool take on it. He doesn't keep it on the DL, he doesn't boast, and he doesn't panic. Seems like Chris has the mentality like, quote, to see something in the sky that you don't understand and then to immediately conclude it's intelligent life from another solar system is the height of foolishness and lack of logic. However, Chris seems to have a little dirt on Mars that maybe we all don't. He said, I think the fundamental question is that Mars was a lot like Earth 4 billion years ago, when life first formed. So if it happened here, did it happen there? It would be evident somewhere in the geologic records. All we need is one fossil for proof. He thinks there could be potentially alien life in the clouds of Venus or on the distant moons of one of our gas giants. Researchers have suggested that there could be microbial life in the clouds of Venus because of the presence of ammonia, which on Earth is a key indicator of aquatic life. Aquatic life, eh? Atlanteans? Hadfield on the UAP phenomenon, quote, we have 7 people living up there. We've been sending people to space since I was born. I spent half a year off planet looking everywhere. It makes no sense at all that intelligent life somewhere from not our solar system could cross interstellar space and just sneak around and only be caught on some strange video by fighter pilots. It just doesn't pass any basic sniff test or logic. It's fun, it's exciting, but if you use reason, the whole argument falls apart. End quote. Okay, Chris Hadfield, keep your secrets from now, you polite Canadian you. Wait till people start looking into Paul Hellyer, another very polite Canadian with some secrets of his own. Until then, you keep distracting us up there with that guitar, Chris. I see you, Jake Sully. Number 2, Michael Collins. NASA veteran and the very first driver up there, Mr. Michael Collins himself, served as command module pilot on the historic Apollo 11 mission in 1969. When Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon for the very first time, saying those very first famous lines we all know so well, Collins was back parking that thing up there. Mr. Collins stayed up there by himself in lunar orbit waiting for the safe return of his crewmates. I can't even stay in a basement with the lights off by myself. Imagine being up there just drifting in the currents of matter, like being in the middle of the ocean. Yeah, no way, dude. The astronaut retired from NASA in 1970 and spent his free time answering questions on Twitter. Apparently, he has gotten some really interesting buzz. Mr. Collins invited the interweb to chat, saying, quote, "Are we alone? Hashtag Ask Michael Collins." And boy oh boy, did he get some responses. Everything from wackos who like aliens to very, very high-ranked generals and pilots who are apparently also wackos who like aliens for talking about this. Collins, quote, "I used to think that NASA sent me to the wrong place, to the moon, because I think Mars is a much more interesting place," end quote. Collins has talked about it in the past about the possibility of alien life existing beyond Earth and doesn't shy away from discussing the topic in full. In 1999, for instance, he even argued on the topic of life developing in other parts of this infinite cosmos. So maybe it has then. He wrote in his book saying, quote, "I am alone now. Truly alone, and absolutely isolated from any known life. Although I may feel like I'm the same person, I also feel that I am different from other people. I have been places and done things you simply would not believe." Collins circled the moon once every 2 hours. What's scarier, walking on an unknown rock that apparently no one's ever visited, or flying all the way around it by yourself in the pitch black with no communications? Collins achieved the rank of Major General. He left NASA in 1970 to join the State Department and later became director of the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum in Washington. One of the most key players in this whole thing. Michael Collins sadly passed in 2021. Number 1, Buzz Aldrin. Of course, the poster child for the whole phenomenon itself, Mr. Edwin Eugene Aldrin Jr. American astronaut, engineer, fighter pilot with a doctorate of science and astronautics. This guy is overqualified, okay? 3 spacewalks in 1966, Gemini 12 mission in 1969, Apollo 11 mission. He and mission commander Neil Armstrong were the first 2 people to land on the moon. Quote, "There was something out there, close enough to be observed. What could it be?" According to Aldrin, on Apollo 11 to the moon, quote, "I observed a light out the window that appeared to be moving alongside us. What could that have been other than a spacecraft from another country or another world? It was either the rocket that had separated from us or the 4 panels that moved away when we extracted the lander, right?" After he returned from his missions, he was convinced he saw aliens while he was out there. Credentials aside, he took a lie detector test, people, which he passed with flying colors. In an interview with C-SPAN Buzz, he talked about the future potential of Earth's moon for humanity. He added a little extra info that might have gained the spark to go back, regarding a certain monolith on a moon. Quote, "Visit the moon Phobos of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato object that goes around Mars once in every 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're gonna say, 'Who put that there?' And you bet, Buzz, I'll be the first one to ask that."
Number 5, sporty UFO. In the 1989 interview that started these whole leaks, the claims sounded like Hollywood sci-fi. But months later, when his identity was revealed, Bob said that he worked at a secret facility where alien technology was being reverse engineered, meaning, taken apart to figure out how it worked and whether the Pentagon could duplicate it. Hey, the premise seems less absurd now. Bob said that his job was to help with reverse engineering one of the 9 flying saucers, which he alleged were extraterrestrial in origin. He claims one of the flying saucers, the one he coined the sport model, was manufactured out of a metallic substance similar in appearance and touch to liquid titanium. Bob said the propulsion of the studied vehicle ran on an antimatter reactor and was fueled by the chemical element with atomic number 115, which I'll touch on more later, I promise. In a subsequent interview that November, Bob appeared unmasked and under his own name, where he claimed that his job interview for work at the facility was with contractor EG&G and that his employer was the United States Navy. Bob said the craft he was working on was dismantled, and the reactor he studied was topped by a sphere or semi-sphere which emitted a force field capable of repulsing human flesh. Ugh. He further explained that the craft was split into 2 main levels. So the reactor was positioned at the center of the upper level, with an antenna extending to the top, surrounded by 3 gravity amplifiers. These were connected to gravity emitters on the lower level, which could rotate 180 degrees to output a gravity beam or anti-gravity wave. In 1989, Bob said the seats of the saucer he saw were approximately tiny human-sized, and that he had seen alien cadavers of a corresponding size. He's mentioned that the main craft he worked on would aim its belly to the target and then bring all the the amplifiers to power, and then fly off in that direction with the belly or bottom forward. If that description of a spacecraft tilting sounds familiar, I'm assuming you're familiar with the gimbal UFO. So the Pentagon released the video back in 2017 where naval pilots encountered a fleet of the unknown craft off of the coast of Florida in 2015 and have since had dozens of similar encounters. In the gimbal video, there's a mechanistic turn against the wind without deceleration, which means a craft without rotors, without heat signatures, plums, without tail fins, and certainly no tail number, moving in a way that is counterintuitive to aeronautics. When Bob saw it, he said it had to be a gravity-propelled craft, which mimics the propulsion system that he described. Okay, how about we take a look at another now famous UFO incident, the 2004 Tic Tac encounter. So the Navy pilot who engaged the Tic Tac, Black Aces Commander Dave Fravor, said he doesn't believe the astonishing craft was made on Earth and that the propulsion might be anti-gravity. So when Bob was shown the Tic Tac video for the first time, it immediately reminded him of the sport mode. His craft stashed in the desert? He said it's the exact same propulsion system. Former Pentagon intelligence officer Lou Elizondo was in charge of ATEP, the secret Pentagon study. He told the I-Team one goal of the project was to determine the physics of UFOs, how they can achieve the seemingly impossible. The military came to believe that the craft relied on special metamaterials, stuff that can't be made with known technology. Bob made these claims decades ago and was ridiculed, but what do you know? The Pentagon is now on the same page. Number 4, Element 115. So, alien technology, Element 115, and Bob Lazar, a trifecta of intrigue that beckons us into the depths of the unknown. So let's embark on this cosmic journey together. Element 115, also known as Moscovium, sits at the heart of Bob's claims. It is said to be the key to extraterrestrial propulsion systems. So imagine a substance so exotic that it bends the laws of physics as we know them, fueling spacecrafts capable of defying gravity itself. Yes, Wicked fans, that one was for you. This element, if harnessed, could revolutionize our understanding of propulsion and open the door to interstellar travel. By the way, let me know in the comments where you'd go first if you could travel anywhere in the blink of an eye. But Bob doesn't stop there. He asserts that these alien crafts use Element 115 to create gravitational fields. Bob claims that the propulsion of the studied vehicle that he reverse engineered ran on an antimatter reactor and was fueled by the chemical element with atomic number 115, which at the time was provisionally named unumpentium and had not yet been artificially created. This concept might seem like pure science fiction, the idea of bending space-time to move through the cosmos at will, but it's at the core of Bob's narrative, challenging the very fabric of our understanding of physics. But let's dive deeper. Bob claims that Element 115 could be a game changer for medicine. By manipulating gravity through this element, surgeons could operate with unparalleled precision, potentially reducing trauma and making recovery a lot faster. The idea of gravity-free surgery might sound like something out of a sci-fi novel, but Bob insists it could be real. Now, onto something that could transform our world. Clean energy! Bob suggests Element 115 could be the answer to our energy woes. If it can indeed create stable anti-gravity waves, it might pave the way for an energy revolution. Clean, limitless power, free from the constraints of fossil fuels, is a tantalizing prospect. And finally, le pièce de résistance, Element 115 as the linchpin of alien technology. Bob's claims paint a picture of flying saucers powered by this incredible element, vessels that defy our current understanding of engineering and physics. It's the stuff of science fiction dreams, or in my case, reality. Bob's assertions about Element 115 and its role in alien technology beckon us to expand our horizons. Whether these claims are rooted in reality or fiction remains a mystery, but they invite us to ponder the boundaries of human knowledge. The cosmos, it seems, still holds secrets that continue to captivate our imagination and drive our quest for understanding.
Number 3. Project Blue Book. Well, here's the thing. Even if Director Hoover at the FBI didn't see fit to look into the Hoddle memo, there were definitely other organizations that were looking into UFOs. Maybe it's not just the FBI, but I can tell you that the Air Force sure was. If you're an experienced UFO enthusiast, perhaps you're already very familiar with Project Blue Book, but if you're not, hey, let's talk about it. The project was officially started in 1952 and terminated in 1969, and the project had two main goals. 1. Confirm if UFOs were a threat to national security. And 2. Scientifically analyze any UFO-related data. Well, that seems like pretty strong evidence to me. Not that the project existed to see if UFOs are real, but rather to determine if they were a threat. That seems like they're writing and admitting like, no, we know, we just want to know if they're scary. And is that not the most human sentiment you've ever heard? If you guys learned nothing from Avatar, we gotta be making friends with aliens, not being afraid of them. In the years of Project Blue Book's operations, a stunning 12,618 reports were filed and collected. And those are just the ones that are officially recorded. Of those, interestingly, there were an individual 700 reports that were found to be unexplainable after research and intense analysis. Isn't that Interesting. Now, a great number of these reports turned out to be the U-2 spy plane that we mentioned all the way back in point number 5, if you remember that far away. But that still leaves 700 completely unexplained sightings of aircraft that the USAF looked into and could not find answers for. The project was ultimately shut down in 1969, with the official explanation being given that, number 1, no UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force has ever given any indication of threat to our national security. And number 2, there has been no evidence submitted to or discovered by the Air Force that sightings categorized as unidentified represent technological developments or principles beyond the range of present-day scientific knowledge. And number 3, there has been no evidence indicating the sightings categorized as unidentified are extraterrestrial vehicles. Oh, well that sounds like kind of a bit of a bummer, doesn't it? They went through thousands of documents and declared that none of it was worthwhile evidence to suggest that aliens exist. Well, it's a shame that we're never going to mention any more things of the Air Force on this video, or any more things about pilots encountering aliens. I mean, that really blows. I mean, except for our next point. Take a listen. Number 2, the UAP report. Very recently, the Pentagon declassified a series of documents known internally as the UAP report, and it was basically the sequel to Project Blue Book, the streaming follow-up. And yeah, every single time we have an alien video, I'm probably gonna have a little meltdown where I talk about how last year the government confirmed that they researched UFOs and that's what they spend your money on, and no one seemed to care about this, they just slipped it under the rug. I guess we were kind of busy with other stuff, but still, what happened to our curious minds, people? We learned that the various 3-letter agencies in the States had been researching, analyzing, and scouting out sightings of UFOs, mostly because pilots just could not stop reporting them during training ops. One pilot, Lieutenant Ryan Graves, claims that he saw hundreds, maybe thousands in his career as a Navy pilot. One of the more famous ones is the Tic Tac sighting, referring to a massive oval-shaped aircraft that was spotted by 2 pilots. This one comes from 2004, and the 2 veteran pilots, Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate, were the ones who called it in. 2 respected, trustworthy Navy veterans. Their report reads that the objects were spotted almost out of nowhere, some 80,000 feet in the air, which would then descend rapidly towards the Pacific Ocean, then stop at around 2,000 feet and hover in place. Very normal airplane behavior. They would drop out of radar range or shoot directly up into the sky on a 90-degree angle. For weeks, Navy crew was watching these objects trying to determine just what they were. They certainly weren't American in origin, and they weren't recognized by any other organizations. To confirm what they'd seen, Slate and Fravor were sent off on a reconnaissance mission to get eyes on it. What they found was more confusing than either of the 2 men could ever have imagined. They reported back that the object they were seeing was like a giant Tic Tac, white-colored, oval-shaped, and 40 feet long. Far too big to be a drone, and it didn't maneuver in a way like an aircraft would, making erratic movements, staying out of reach of radars, as if it knew it was trying to stay undetected. The pilots flew towards a rendezvous point to touch down, and presumably cracked their windows open and asked each other, hey, what the hell was that? But as they flew towards the LZ, the UAP flew past them at a breakneck speed and then disappeared entirely. When questioned about it, Fravor said that it was unlike any aircraft he had ever seen in his life. I mean, that guy flew planes like every day for years, so he probably knows a thing or two. Number 1, non-terrestrial officers. Now, if you're like me, you're probably frustrated that you know the truth is so close within grasp behind closed doors. To know in your heart of hearts that there are answers to the unexplained just out of sight would drive you to do something crazy. Now, for most of us, all we can do is sit and speculate and maybe watch some lovely top 5 videos of a very handsome host talking about aliens. But for one Gary McKinnon, a Scottish computer programmer, he decided that wasn't enough and decided to take matters into his own hands. McKinnon was a genius computer hacker and had his sights set on the biggest prize he could imagine, going after NASA's servers to see if they had any hidden alien data just waiting to be found, in what was described as the biggest military hack of all time. Quite the conversation starter. Why would anyone risk their career, freedom, and livelihood on this? Well, Gary wanted the truth and he would do anything to get it. McKinnon claims he had insider knowledge that confirmed the US had suppressed anti-gravity technology reverse engineered from UFOs and free energy. In his own statement, McKinnon said, "This should not be kept hidden from the public when pensioners can't even pay their fuel bills." Yeah. Well, so what did McKinnon find? Well, he didn't find proof of the reverse-engineered UFOs that he'd been hoping for, but he found quite a lot that was remarkably illuminating. First up, a 400-page document called the Disclosure Project, outlining testimonials from government agents across multiple branches of service, reporting all their sightings and scientific analysis on unexplained flying objects. That would already be pretty impressive, but on top of that, McKinnon also managed to find a document entitled Non-Terrestrial Officers. Non-Terrestrial Officers? What? What? Is that just fancy talk for astronaut? Well, the document was a spreadsheet listing the names of NASA officers and employees who were to be transferred to new ships or to serve on board space stations. But here's where it gets weird. McKinnon noted that the names of these vessels listed did not appear to exist in any other database. And if that wasn't enough, McKinnon claims in his searching he saw images of aircraft that did not resemble anything he had ever seen. One in particular he describes as looking like a massive cigar-shaped craft floating over the northern hemisphere that did not look man-made. One wonders if that's the same as the Tic Tac ship. He said he was in a shock looking at the image and didn't think to take a photo. Now, after pulling off an unbelievable fast one on NASA, McKinnon couldn't resist a bit of cheeky cyber vandalism and edited NASA's website homepage with a bit of text that read, "Your security is crap, by the way." Now, I'm not endorsing hacking a government website, but that's one of the coolest things I've ever read. Now, I don't know how much you know about the United States government. Boy, do they just love it when you prove to them that they have a massive security breach in their most classified data. Presumably the only thing that kept McKinnon from being strapped to a car battery and thrown into a black van by the men in black was the fact that he lived in Scotland and was kind of hard to get a hold of. He was arrested by UK police, and the United States government tried their absolute hardest to have him extradited to the States to be tried for the fullest extent of his crimes. Honestly, I bet it was the note. I bet that's what really pushed them over the edge. McKinnon managed to avoid extradition and was protected by the Crown for serving out what would have been a 70-year sentence. But presumably he's not planning any road trips to the States anytime soon, and I'm sure NASA has improved their security just a little bit. Number 5. The Navy pilots. Since the release of the UAP documents, the new nomenclature, UFO fever has been in the air more than ever since Roswell. We've got open confirmation that the US government, the Pentagon, is researching actively the possibility of alien craft outright. That's the craziest thing that's ever happened in my life. In September 2019, Navy spokesperson Joe Gradisher confirmed that 3 recently released videos by the military contain evidence of unidentified aerial phenomenon. Like, that's it. This is the Navy, the government pointing to a video and going, yeah, that's an unidentified flying object that we don't know about. They're not saying it's a weather balloon. They're not saying it's stars. They're not outright saying it's an alien, but they're certainly implying it. The Navy agreed that they would confirm the sightings this time because pilots encounter bizarre sightings all the time, but are usually too concerned to report the sightings because of the stigma attached to previous theories about what may or may not be in those videos. Put gently, it means that the Navy felt like they had to comment on this thing so that pilots would feel comfortable admitting that maybe they're seeing UFOs without feeling like a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracist. The videos in question include reports from the STARS Academy of Arts and Sciences, released from 2017 to 2018. They feature long, oblong-shaped objects captured with infrared that appear in the Earth's atmosphere before rapidly disappearing from view. Now, really interestingly here is these aren't the only pill-shaped cylindrical UFOs that have been spotted recently. There were 2 videos from 2015 that came out, and before that, there was a Navy case involving these in 2004, and even on the rest of this list, you'll see a cylindrical cigar-shaped UFO in a sighting from the 40s. So this sort of thing does happen a lot. Now, the purpose of the Navy investigating all this stuff, it's more focused on safety hazard and threats of national security, but hey, at the same time, they may not be willing to talk about it so brazenly, but they definitely are checking just a little bit to make sure they are aliens. But they definitely know more than they're letting on. This footage released only makes up a tiny fraction of what the US Navy and other service branches encounter. One pilot, Lieutenant Graves, claims that in his 10 years flying for the Navy, he thinks he's probably encountered, thousands of UFOs in his time. Those are his words. Now, who is to say how many of those might just actually be unidentified flying objects, birds, scouts, drones, whatever, but who's to say how many of them really were alien craft from outside the planet? And my friends, if you're looking to educate yourself on the matter of extraterrestrials, UAPs, UFOs, well, you've got to know by now Top 5 Scary is the place to be. I see the viewer stats in the videos. You goblins love when we talk about aliens. Well, if you want to keep loving them, click on through. We've got more unexplained sightings in the sky than the CIA. And if you want them delivered hot and fresh, you can subscribe and get them before anybody else. Number 4. Childs Whitted Case. The Childs Whitted encounter is one of the most recognized UFO encounters in American history for how surprisingly credible it seems. It happened shortly after the Roswell incident, when UFO fever was hot on everybody's minds in the States, and it was showing. The sighting occurred in the morning hours hours of one July 24, 1948. The two pilots, one Clarence Childs and John Whitted, were flying approximately 5,000 feet above Montgomery, Alabama on a clear, normal night. Flight was going well, nothing too exciting, but at around 2:45 in the morning, Childs saw something peculiar. He noticed a dull red glowing light above and ahead of the aircraft, and it wasn't even remotely near Christmas, so it wasn't Rudolph leading the sleigh. He told Whitted that it must be a new type of army jet that was flying in front of them that neither of them had ever seen. They wanted to get a better look at it, and in a matter of seconds, well, they would. When the object flew past the right side of their plane and pulled up with a tremendous burst of flame protruding from its rear, and it zoomed upwards and onwards into the clouds. The two pilots described the object looking like a flying cigar with a cylindrical chassis and two decks and windows. Besides the two pilots, one passenger on the flight, one C.L. McKelvey, insisted that during his flight he saw a bright streak of red flashing lights by one of his windows. Now, Childs and Whitted were obviously pretty darn confused by whatever it was they'd saw. Didn't look like no plane they'd seen before, and the way it moved seemed technologically more advanced than anything the US Army was putting out in the late 40s. Now, the US Army proper would challenge this account, and their scientists insisted. They investigated the report and said that it was probably just a meteor the pilots and passengers had seen, which almost sounds like it might make sense until you stop and think about it for a second, because what meteor has windows and a glowing red light coming from it and propels itself forward and rapidly goes upward? Most meteors I've ever heard of go downwards. And Childs and Whitted both disagreed with this as well, saying they got a good long look at it and it wasn't a meteor. Whatever it truly was, though, might be lost to history, tragically. Number 3, the Gander, Newfoundland encounter. Our next story comes to us from Gander, Newfoundland, and it happened on February 10, 1951. A U.S. Naval Reserve Lieutenant and pilot Graham Bethune was occupying the captain's seat of a plane flying near Newfoundland, Canada, when he spotted something unusual, massive, and rapidly approaching towards the plane. It resembled a disc. The co-pilot made a report of what he saw, and this is what he wrote. Take a listen. I observed a glow of light below the horizon about 1,000 to 1,500 feet above the water. The pilot and I observed its course and motion for about 4 or 5 minutes before calling it to the attention of the other crew members. Suddenly, the object changed direction at an incredible speed and began to pulsate, changing its colors as well. Then, it somehow reversed its course and tripled its speed until at last it disappeared over the horizon. The report would go on to say that whatever this object was, it came within 5 miles of the aircraft, which was proven later by radar evidence. Now, when the plane had landed, the entire crew was detained by intelligence officers and interrogated. At their destination, pilot and passengers were questioned again by naval intelligence and required to sign full disclosure documents. Now, take this next part with a grain of salt. Okay? Because I only found one source on this. But apparently a CIA scientist confidentially interviewed the pilot, and during their interrogation, he showed him a photo of a disc-like object that looked extremely similar to the one they had seen flying over the Atlantic. However, during the interviews, no Navy, Air Force, or CIA men would ever answer any questions related to extraterrestrials. No one would say the word alien. No one was saying UFO. Nothing like that. They were trying very hard to downplay that. So what was it then? Because it sounds incredibly suspicious that the interviewers had a photo of something that looked similar to it and weren't saying the word alien at all. Number 2, November 1986 Japanese Airlines flight. Our next one comes to us from a pair of Japanese pilots. In November 1986, Japanese Airlines Flight 1628 was heading over Alaska. Captain Kenju Terauchi and a crew of 2 others were on a flight making routine cargo deliveries to France. Captain Terauchi saw something that caught his attention when he saw blinding lights flashing off at the left and the right of the plane. Now, initially he didn't think too much of it. He thought, hey, maybe these are just US fighter jets zipping around. As his plane furthered forward, he realized that the object was flying ahead of him was of the unidentified variety, a UFO, if you will. Terauchi said that it looked like 2 spaceships had stopped in front of their faces, shooting off lights. The inside cockpit shined brightly, and I felt warm in the face, he wrote. That almost sounds kind of pleasant, to be honest. Captain Terauchi described the objects as being cuboid-shaped spaceships with a jet propulsion system that had horizontal lines of circular exhausts clustered around a dark center. The captain had also reported that when the plane had flown by this object, ground communications were cut out and all radar was blocked. Well, that's kind of odd, isn't it? Pretty interesting. Well, if you thought that was weird, the FAA would agree with. That's the Federal Aviation Administration, who investigated the report very closely and interrogating Tarauchi for everything they could out of the incident. Now, during this questioning, his co-pilot and his flight engineer, they said that they thought the object they saw was just strange lights, but they did agree that they really couldn't easily explain what it was they saw. In the end, the FAA ruled that what it was light refraction through ice crystals suspended in clouds. A bunch of science words. Sure. Number 1, Lieutenant Gorman. Our number 1 spot on this list is a humdinger of a tale. Now, most of us can only hope to maybe someday see a UFO in our lives, but I mean, maybe if you were like me and you watched Star Wars way too many times and you still ask the hairdressers to get your hair cut like Luke Skywalker, not like anybody I know, maybe you dream of flying an X-Wing through the stars, dodging lasers, getting into a cool alien dogfight. It's a shame none of us can claim we've done that, except, you know, George Gorman of the North Dakota National Guard. I don't think anyone would expect there to be anything exciting happening in North Dakota, but one of the best UFO encounters in American history did. Let's take a little listen and learn about it. It was 1948, a year after the New Mexico Roswell incident, while people were still hyper-focused on little gray men and flying saucers. Lieutenant Gorman was flying a fighter jet solo around the skies above Fargo when he saw what he thought was an aircraft around 500 feet below him. He radioed his tower, but the operator told him that there weren't any other planes to be around and that it was a suspicious vehicle. So Gorman told the tower back he was going to investigate the situation and flew in within 1,000 yards to try and positively ID the subject. Gorman said it looked to be about 6 to 8 inches, clear white and completely round without fuzz at the edges, and it was blinking on and off. As I approached, the light suddenly became steady and pulled into a sharp left bank. I thought it was making a pass at the tower. Gorman then said he thought the light charged at him. He didn't want to be the first pilot to crash into a UFO, so he readied himself to avoid it, but found the object suddenly shot straight upwards in the air, directly above him, and then disappearing into the clouds. Gorman tried his best to pull up to follow along, but his plane went into a stall while he was trailing it, and the entity had vanished. Back at the air tower, 2 traffic controllers reported they also saw a light flying above the airstrip they couldn't explain, and weren't present on any flight logs. Gorman was questioned about what he saw, and he said he was convinced that it wasn't just a light, that it moved too naturally, that it moved like it was reacting to his movements, as if it was playing a game with him. He said there was thought and precision behind all its maneuvers. We should ask it what it thought about all of that if Gorman was moving too naturally, reacting to all of that.
Number 5, viewing alien craft test flights. In the world of unexplained phenomena and mysteries that challenge the boundaries of human knowledge, the story of Bob Lazar and his experiences viewing test flights of extraterrestrial spacecraft is a statement that deserves more explanation. Alright, picture this, folks. A secluded desert facility, shrouded in secrecy, nestled somewhere near the infamous Area 51. So this is where Bob Lazar claimed to have worked on a project. That would forever alter our understanding of technology and the universe itself. Bob's account begins with his recruitment into a classified government program, the likes of which few could even, wrap their heads around. He asserted that he was tasked with the remarkable mission of unraveling the propulsion systems of spacecrafts not of this Earth. These crafts, he described, were unlike anything humanity had ever conceived. What sets his story apart is his assertion that he didn't merely study these alien machines from afar. No, he claimed to have witnessed these saucers in action, undergoing test flights that push the boundaries of our understanding of physics. Now, I'm not a physics girly, so I can't get technical about this, but these were not just flights. They were demonstrations of technology that seemed to defy the laws of nature as we know them. Imagine being there on that fateful day, peering through the desert haze as the saucer-shaped craft defied gravity. Okay, wicked moment. I had to. Bob has recounted how these vehicles hovered silently and then in an instant accelerated to speeds that would have even the fastest fighter jets of this world in the dust. But the most mind-bending part was the way these crafts maneuvered, making right-angle turns without the slightest hint of inertia or g-forces. Bob's descriptions conjure images of technology far beyond our current scientific comprehension. He attributed the astonishing capabilities of these saucers to a substance he referred to as Element 115. According to his accounts, the element had the power to generate a gravitational field, allowing these crafts to bend the very fabric of space and time. The implications of such technology are staggering, I know. It challenges our understanding of propulsion, gravity, and, the fundamental laws of physics, which is probably where my dad would argue with me today. If Bob's accounts are to be believed, which I do, we must consider the possibility that these extraterrestrial crafts represent a level of technological advancement that far surpasses anything humanity has achieved. Number 4, giving credibility to the Tic Tac video. On November 14th of 2004, Lieutenant Alex Dietrich was piloting her FA-18 Super Hornet when she observed an oblong object hovering over the water. It leapt into motion, skimming 500 to 1,000 feet over the waves at around 500 knots. The fighter jet's onboard radar couldn't detect the object, but Alex's weapons system operator in the rear seat, whose name isn't public, witnessed it as well. She has quoted her recollection as we were trying to call out what we're seeing to each other and to make sure everybody else is seeing it. It's moving so erratically and so fast that our voices, our minds, and our radio calls can't keep up with it. Now, the majority of credible modern-day UFO sightings can be credited to those that work in the Air Force, as it should be noted that military pilots are trained at what they call, REAS, and referring specifically in this case to the art of recognizing aircrafts by their shapes, paint schemes, unit insignia, and more. One of the other Super Hornets that launched behind Alex was Lieutenant Commander Chad Underwood, who was able to capture the object on an infrared camera. It was about 40 feet long, round and smooth, and quickly received the nickname Tic Tac. Around this time, starting on November 10th to be exact, Gary Voorhees, a petty officer on the USS Princeton guided missile cruiser, had been reporting apparitions on his radar screens in the same area. Now, triple checking his equipment before he made his report, and being the main technician responsible for the equipment, along with having 6 years of Navy experience at the time, he described what he was seeing as impossible. Once again, in just seconds, an object had dropped to the waterline from 60,000 feet, hovered, and then zipped away at high velocity, making right-angle turns that were quoted as being confounding and, yep, defying gravity. The objects returned for the next week, with Voorhees quoted as saying, "I was able to see it on the horizon during the night and during the day. It was definitely a glowing object. Could I tell you for 100% certainty what it was we were tracking? No." Now, footage of this event used to exist, with Gary being able to vividly describe his memories, but has since been completely scrubbed from the internet. I'm just gonna give the government my usual dose of side-eye. Don't mind me. So what does Bob have to do with this? Well, when he was shown the Tic Tac video for the first time, it immediately reminded him of the Sport Mode, which was his name for the craft stashed in the desert. He said it's the exact same propulsion system that I just talked about a moment ago. Pretty wild. Number 3, contact with Zeta Reticuli. So Bob has claimed that during his, joining the program, he read briefing documents describing the historical involvement of Earth for the past 10,000 years with extraterrestrial beings described as gray aliens from a planet orbiting the twin binary system Zeta Reticuli. As of September 2019, no extrasolar planets have been found in the system, according to government experts, but we all know that they can lie to us about that. So for the uninitiated, what the heck is Zeta Reticuli? So this is a wide binary star system in the southern constellation of Reticulum. From the southern hemisphere, the pair can be seen with the regular eye as a double star in very dark skies. Based on parallax measurements, this system is located at a distance of about 39.3 light years from Earth. Both stars are solar analogs that have characteristics similar to those of the Sun. They belong to the Zeta Herculis moving group of stars that share a common origin. So you might be asking, okay Alexa, what does this have to do with aliens? So does anybody remember Skinny Bob? If not, I'll refresh your memory. So a very curious video showed up on YouTube in 2011, showing a collection of leaked videos where you can see an alien being interrogated by some sort of government agency of sorts. It's a typical gray type entity shown being interviewed and examined, supposedly as part of some sort of diplomatic exchange, and here's the moment you've been waiting for. He says he's from the Zeta Reticuli star system, sent as part of an envoy to discuss matters of mutual concern. According to the videos, the aliens would be escorted by special officers and only meet with high-ranking officials. Although several aliens are claimed to have been present, the one most prominently featured was given the nickname Skinny Bob. The alien appears as a very thin, slouched over figure with an oversized bald head, slit-like mouth, large eyes that seem expressive and blink, and claw-like hands. Now there was apparently a whole series of interviews conducted with the creature between 1942 and 69, although only a few clips have managed to get leaked out. The most well-known clip simply shows Skinny Bob sitting at a table, apparently in a telepathic interview, after which we see footage of the alien from head to toe, showing its disproportionately long arms and overall build. After that, there is a shot of it within a pool of some sort of liquid where it was supposedly asleep. Now, according to the videos, the aliens were often filmed without their knowledge or agreement, with document 072-E supposedly describing an incident in 1961 where 3 of the beings realized they were being secretly filmed by a hidden device, which was considered a violation of their agreement. There was a treaty that stipulated that photographs and filming of the entities would not be allowed unless specific permission was given. The diplomatic exchange of it all matches up with what we know about Area 51 being a place for secret meetings and more. Number 2, Men in Black are erasing history. So yeah, it's no secret the government has the power to erase or cover up whatever they want. And what they've done to Bob in an attempt to discredit him is a very clear example of that control. So Bob is adamant that his employment and education records have been erased and modified. So remember how I mentioned that he's a physicist? So Bob claims to have obtained master's degrees in physics from MIT and in electronics from Caltech, but mysteriously, both universities show no record of him. Now I get one institution losing records can be explained, as like a clerical error, but both losing records are a little suspicious. Earlier, I also mentioned how Bob claimed that his job interview for work at the facility was with contractor EG&G, and that his employer was the United States Navy, right? Well, EG&G stated it had no records on him, and his employment at a Nellis Air Force Base subsidiary has also been discredited by skeptics, as well as the United States Air Force. Once again, discredited or simply just erased by the government. Bob claims to have worked as a physicist during his tenure at the Los Alamos Meson Physics Facility, but an inquiry into his position revealed his role to have been a technician for a contractor firm, and that he worked neither as a physicist or for Los Alamos. Not to sound like a broken record, but it's clearly the men in black at work here, and skeptics just need to understand that. Number 1, Element 115. Alrighty, the moment we've all been waiting for. What the heck is Element 115 and what does it do? So Bob has claimed that the propulsion of the studied vehicle that he reverse engineered ran on an antimatter reactor and was fueled by the chemical element with atomic number 115, which at the time was provisionally named unempentium and had not yet been artificially created. It was first synthesized in 2003 and later named moscovium. He said that the propulsion system relied on a stable isotope of E115, which allegedly generates a gravity wave that allowed the vehicle to fly and to evade visual detection by bending light around it. Now, no stable isotopes of moscovium have yet been synthesized. All have proven extremely radioactive, decaying in a few hundred milliseconds. In 2017, Bob's workplace was raided by the FBI and local police, which he theorizes was to recover Element 115, a substance he said he kind of kept from the government lab. I don't blame him.
Number 5 on this list is Helen Sharman. Dr. Helen Sharman was the first ever British woman to go to space. She went in 1991 on a mission to the Soviet space station. Dr. Helen Sharman is extremely well educated, renowned in her community, and is one of the very few people in the history of humankind who's actually been to space. Therefore, I hold her opinion in extremely high regard when we're referring to something like extraterrestrial life. And her opinion is that said life is already here. Dr. Helen Sharman told The Observer's magazine that aliens exist. There's no two ways about it. There must be all sorts of different forms of life. She went on to say in her interview that it's possible they're here right now and we simply can't see them. Like I said earlier, this is an actual astronaut who's saying this right now. Someone who very clearly knows far more about this than your average Joe and whose opinion should be acknowledged. Now, just because one person believes that alien life could potentially be on Earth, well, that's far from fact. But oftentimes when we think about aliens and the potential of them being on our planet, it can easily get chalked up to some mumbo jumbo from people who aren't well researched or properly educated on the topic. That certainly can't be said about Helen Sharman, and I think that the fact that someone of this background is openly coming out and giving this opinion shows that the culture surrounding aliens is changing. I think that as time goes on, we'll see a lot more individuals like Helen come out and express this opinion, further adding to the validity of alien life living among us. Number 4 on this list is Oumuamua. Oumuamua was first discovered on October 19th in 2017, and it holds the title as being the very first discovered interstellar object to visit our solar system. Now, even though this object isn't necessarily evidence of aliens being here on Earth, a lot of people look to it as evidence of aliens' existence as a whole. The biggest name on this list of alien believers being Avi Loeb. Avi is a Harvard professor for astrophysics and has made it known that he doesn't think this object entering our solar system is your typical comet or asteroid. He's come out and said that this object is actually an alien probe sent to search for other life in the universe. In fact, he wrote, Oumuamua may be a fully operational probe sent intentionally to Earth's vicinity by an alien civilization. One of the biggest reasons he thinks this and others believe it is due to this object's strange movement. The speed at which this object is flying doesn't seem to fit in with our current laws of physics. The object is simply moving too fast for the gravitational pull that we believe to be acting upon it. It's also flipping and maneuvering itself in a way that doesn't seem to make any sense. Now, this thing is wildly far away, so even though we can get a rough estimate of how big it is, and it certainly is very sizable, it's hard to know for sure exactly what this thing is. He has faced some backlash in the scientific community for his claims, but then again, everybody who comes out and talks about aliens typically does. All we know for sure about this thing is that it came from a completely different solar system and seems to be accelerating in speed, which doesn't make any sense to anyone. I don't want to wholeheartedly jump on the alien train simply because of this logic, but I also don't think that immediately writing off a Harvard astrophysics professor is the smart thing to do either.
Number 3, an alien body. Yep, Alexa talking about a corpse. Go figure. Did you expect anything less today? This tale takes place in Russia, and while I don't exactly recommend physically trying to travel there right now for, reasons, we shall take this trip virtually. Eugenia Popova of Petrozavodsk City first reported in 2011 that she had been keeping a frozen alien body in a refrigerator for a couple of years. Yeah, just casually. I have questions. Like, was it next to the food? Was it a spare fridge? Was it in like a crisper? What did it smell like? Was it like baking soda? Did it help with the fridge? Like, curious minds need to know. Allegedly, she found it next to her summer house, so I suppose we can assume it was a fridge that wasn't used as much. Maybe it was like a garage fridge? On the day she discovered the body, Eugenia claimed that she was disturbed by a terrible noise that shook her from her sleep, describing it as deafening, screeching, and overpowering. As one does. She rushed outdoors and came across the boiling hot alien remains lying next to metal fragments. The creature was between 40 to 50 centimeters long, had a big head, mouth and orbits, and was wearing a one-piece garment of some sort. 2 days after going public with her story, Eugenia was visited by some people who confiscated the body for the purpose of investigation, and according to their words, took it to the Karelian Research Center of the Russian Academy of Sciences. However, employees of the research center, who were interviewed later, said they had never heard the story. I'm sensing an all too familiar government cover-up here. How about you folks at home? Honestly, if the photos weren't as convincing as they are, I probably wouldn't have included it in today's list, but I just couldn't tear my eyes from how strange it looks. Number 2, the original Roswell evidence. Yes, I reference it often, but it's truly one of the best examples of, alien proof that cannot be debunked as easily as some of the other older claims. And also, something that is not from this world. Rancher W.W. Mac Brazel had found wreckage on his property in Lincoln County, New Mexico, which is roughly 120 kilometers north of Roswell, sometime between mid-June and early July, describing it as rubber strips, tinfoil, and thick paper. The ranch had no phone and no radio, leaving Mac completely unaware of the ongoing, flying saucer craze at the time. So he gathered the debris and just pushed it under some brush to dispose of it. This was not the first instance of a flying disc spotting in the region, with several stories already being reported to the press that year. So on July 5th, Mac drove into Corona, where he heard stories of silvery flying discs, and 2 days later made the decision to bring the wreckage into the sheriff's office. The sheriff called in the Roswell Army Airfield, which assigned the matter to Major Jesse Marcel. Mac brought Major Marcel back to the debris site, and the two gathered up more of the pieces of the debris, with the major taking the materials home. The next day, Public Information Officer for the Roswell Army, Walter Haunt, issued a press release stating that personnel from the field's 509th Operations Group had recovered a flying disc. On that same day, Major Marcel took the material to his base commander, Colonel William Blanchard, who reported the findings to General Roger Ramey at Fort Worth Army Airfield, FWAAF for short. Or FWAF. General Ramey ordered that the material be flown to Fort Worth immediately, leaving Marcel to board a B-29 Superfortress to make the flight. As soon as Marcel brought the material to General Ramey's office, both Ramey and his chief of staff, Colonel Thomas Dubose, identified the material as pieces of a weather balloon kite. The weather officer on duty explained to reporters that Ray wind devices were used at about 80 weather stations across the country. The balloons were attached to a 6-pointed reflective device that looked like a silver star, and after launch the balloon would expand with increasing altitude before bursting at around 60,000 feet, with pieces dispersing in their fall to the ground. After the initial newspaper reports of 1947, the Roswell incident faded from public attention for more than 30 years until the late 1970s, which brings us to February of 1978, when UFO researcher Stanton Friedman interviewed Major Marcel, whose statements contradicted those he made to the press in 1947, saying, they wanted some statements, but he had to keep his mouth shut at the time. And once again, General Ramey is the one who discussed everything to the newspapers and, to forget about it, saying it's nothing more than a weather observation balloon. Of course, both men knew differently. It wasn't a weather balloon. And after the United States congressional inquiries, the General Accounting Office actually launched an inquiry and directed the Office of the United States Secretary of the Air Force to conduct an internal investigation. A report released in 1994 concluded that the material recovered in 1947 was likely, keyword here, debris from now Project Mogul, so not a weather balloon. A little suspicious. A scholarly consensus emerged concluding that the military had decided to conceal the true purpose of the crash device, allegedly now nuclear test monitoring. The balloon had allegedly been launched from Alamogordo Army Airfield a month earlier, carrying a radar reflector and classified Project Mogul sensors. The Air Force reports were dismissed by UFO experts as being either disinformation or simply implausible. So while this has been debunked time and time again by a constantly lying government, I truly believe that these items were truly not from this world. Number 1, Mexico alien corpses. Yep, more corpses. Alrighty folks, we're ending today with the most recent case on our list, a display of bodies from September of this year. Now few cases are as captivating as this discovery of two tiny mummified figures found in Peru. Mexican journalist and UFO enthusiast Jamie Mawson passionately champions these beings as a pivotal moment in human history. With elongated heads and 3 fingers on each hand, they challenge our understanding of life on Earth. In the heart of Mexico City, in the district of Santa Fe, Mawson's office became a hub of intrigue. 2 closed boxes, their glass lids offering a tantalizing glimpse into the unknown, held these peculiar figures. As witnesses gathered around, their ancient appearance became apparent, as they possess 2 eyes, a mouth, 2 arms, and 2 legs. Mawson claims these beings, found near the always intriguing Nazca lines in 2017, are unlike anything the world has seen. Through social media and public presentations, Mawson provides a compelling case that these beings date back about 1,000 years, and they belong to no known earthly species. The assertion that one of them, possibly a female, contained eggs adds another layer of mystery. Now this man's crusade is driven by his belief that this discovery has the potential to unite humanity in the face of such profound questions. However, some skepticism looms. David Spergel, a former head of Princeton University's astrophysics department, calls for transparency and openness in testing these samples, welcoming scrutiny from the global scientific community. DNA and carbon dating tests shared on social media and in presentations provide supporting evidence for the otherworldly nature of said beings. The results claim a genetic composition that defies known terrestrial evolution, with 30% remaining a mystery. Carbon dating from the National Autonomous University of Mexico asserts that these beings are more than a millennium old, a finding that stirs curiosity. The figures themselves, shown at the hearing, exhibit humanoid features but with peculiar characteristics, such as retractable necks and long skulls reminiscent of avian traits. They also reportedly possess implants of rare metals, including osmium, one of Earth's scarcest elements. The question of how these figures arrived in Mexico remains shrouded in mystery, with the possession resting with an unidentified Mexican man who was present in Mawson's office. He offers a little explanation, promising to reveal the full story at an undisclosed time. Jose de Jesus Zalque Benitez, director of the Health Sciences Research Institute of the Secretary of the Navy, stands alongside Mawson, supporting his claims. Their interpretation of the scientific data raises profound questions about the origins of these beings. As Mawson and his team strive to push the boundaries of our understanding, the world watches, torn between skepticism and wonder, in the pursuit of answers that may forever alter our perception of what the heck is on this planet?
Number 5. The Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle, also known as the Devil's Triangle, is a region in the western part of the North Atlantic Ocean that has gained infamy due to numerous unexplained disappearances of ships and aircraft. Over the years, various conspiracy theories have emerged, suggesting that the Bermuda Triangle is home to extraterrestrial objects and creatures. One of the most intriguing theories proposes that the Bermuda Triangle is not only a wormhole of chaos, but additionally a hotbed of extraterrestrial activity. This theory believes that extraterrestrial beings and advanced alien civilizations established secret bases and sprawling underwater structures within the Bermuda Triangle. Some theorists also suggest that extraterrestrial creatures inhabit the depths of the Bermuda Triangle, and their presence is responsible for the unusual occurrences. Essentially, extraterrestrial entities are responsible for the disappearances and strange phenomena reported in the area. Conspiracy theorists argue that the Bermuda Triangle's mysterious nature, with its unpredictable weather patterns and electromagnetic anomalies, is indicative of some level of extraterrestrial involvement. They believe that extraterrestrial technology, such as advanced energy fields or gravitational anomalies, could be causing ships and aircraft to vanish without a trace. Additionally, proponents of this conspiracy point to alleged eyewitness accounts of UAP and unidentified submerged objects, USOs, in the area. And I didn't know that submerged objects were called USO, so I thought that was pretty cool. They argue that these sightings are clear evidence of extraterrestrial beings monitoring and using the Bermuda Triangle for their own unknown purposes. The conspiracy theory suggesting that the Bermuda Triangle houses extraterrestrial objects and creatures remains a subject of major fascination for some individuals. However, it lacks substantial evidence and is largely considered speculative and unsubstantiated by the scientific community. The mysteries surrounding the Bermuda Triangle are abundant and prominent, and the theories must have sprung from some semblance of truth. Number 4. The Pentagon. The conspiracy theories about the United States government hiding evidence of extraterrestrial life and alien technology, including at the Pentagon, are plentiful and persistent. According to this theory, the Pentagon has been secretly studying and reverse engineering alien technology for decades, and it's in possession of numerous extraterrestrial life forms. The theory of extraterrestrial involvement at the Pentagon gained renewed attention in 2017, when the New York Times reported on a secret government program called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. And I've talked about this program a lot in my other videos, but here's a quick explanation. The program was tasked with investigating reports of UAP and other aerial phenomena that could not be easily explained. They would receive reports and comb over information in the hopes of finding a reasonable explanation. Some conspiracy theorists claim that the AATIP was part of a larger effort to study and reverse engineer alien technology, which again, I've talked about a lot. Some pretty cool ideas there. Proponents of the conspiracy theory point to evidence of extraterrestrial involvement in other government programs and initiatives as well. For example, some theorists claim that the Roswell UFO incident, in which a supposed UFO crashed in Roswell, New Mexico, was covered up by the government in order to hide evidence of extraterrestrial life and technology. They also point to government documents and whistleblowers who claim to have inside knowledge of extraterrestrial involvement at the Pentagon, like David Grush, who came forward at a hearing earlier this year claiming that the Pentagon was in possession of extraterrestrial technology and non-human biologics. Scientists and experts, of course, reject the idea of extraterrestrial involvement at the Pentagon. They argue that the lack of concrete evidence to support the theory and the government's secrecy about classified programs and initiatives is more likely to be motivated by national security concerns than by a desire to hide the evidence of extraterrestrial life. While some curious minds continue to believe in the theory, the majority reject it as a crazed delusion, unsupported by any evidence. Whatever the truth may be, the idea that the government is hiding evidence of extraterrestrial life and technology continues to prevail, and the secrets being held in the most secretive, secure government location just makes a lot of sense.
Number 3, bone density scanners. Alien technology and bone density scanners. Two seemingly unrelated topics, yet they intersect in the fascinating narrative of Bob. So let's unravel this intriguing connection, shall we? So we all know Bob. I've been talking about him all day. You know, reverse engineering crazy stuff. So let's see where advanced extraterrestrial science meets our very bones. Bob asserts that element 115, yeah I know, the substance I mentioned a moment ago, a key player in this narrative, isn't just about propelling UFOs, but has applications much closer to home. In the realm of medical technology, bone density scanners are a crucial tool for assessing bone health. But Bob's story takes this mundane device and infuses it with an otherworldly twist. He suggests that element 115, you know, the same substance at the core of alien propulsion, could be used in these scanners to create gravitational fields. So just imagine stepping into a bone density scanner, and instead of conventional x-rays, you're bathed in a field that gently manipulates gravity. Yes, it's kind of like sci-fi, but Bob insists it could be real. By using the properties of element 15 to create a localized anti-gravity effect, these scanners can provide more accurate and non-invasive assessments of bone density. Okay, so why does this matter? Well, for starters, it could revolutionize healthcare. Accurate bone density measurements are crucial for diagnosing conditions like osteoporosis and for assessing fracture risk. Traditional methods involve exposure to radiation, but an element 115 powered scanner could potentially eliminate that risk entirely. As someone with lifelong bone and tendon injuries, I wish we could have this technology now to be able to more accurately scan the state of so many conditions. Moreover, the technology Bob proposes could lead to a deeper understanding of gravity itself. If we can manipulate gravity on such a small scale, what does that mean for our broader understanding of this fundamental force in the universe? It's a question that transcends bone health and ventures into the very fabric of our reality. Now, I know, skepticism is a crucial component of scientific inquiry, and Bob's claims have faced their fair share of scrutiny. Yes, element 15 isn't exactly a stable element in our periodic table, but that doesn't mean the concept isn't worth exploring. Science often progresses by entertaining unconventional ideas and testing their validity. The story of element 15 and its potential application in bone density scanners reminds us of the profound interconnectedness of scientific concepts. What starts as a tale of alien technology could, in the hands of an imaginative mind, spark innovations that reshape the way we approach healthcare and even our understanding of the universe itself. In the ever-evolving tapestry of human knowledge, it's the unconventional ideas and uncharted territories that often lead to the most profound discoveries. So as we contemplate the implications of element 115 and bone density scanners, we're reminded that the quest for knowledge knows no bounds, and the boundaries of what's possible are constantly expanding. Number 2, hand scanners. So while Bob's assertions have long raised some eyebrows, he has found some newfound support in the form of a revealing photograph. No, not that kind. Not here. Thanks to filmmaker Jeremy Corbell's determination, Bob's narrative has been bolstered with tangible evidence. So the photograph hails from a classified US government program conducted at at Nellis Air Force Range, located in close proximity to, where else, Area 51. But what's remarkable is how closely the depicted hand scanner aligns with Bob's detailed descriptions. So Bob, taken back by the confirmation, reflected that he never thought he would see one of these again. Okay, I know. What was it, Alexa? You jumped ahead. I'm getting to it. It was a biometric scanner, he explained, designed to measure the length of hand bones to grant access to the, illustrious, crazy, mysterious SF area. There were slits and pins in a light fixture above it, and it scanned your hand to measure the bone length in your hands. Sorry, I'm suddenly very curious about how the length of my bones confirms I'm like human and not an alien. Were aliens really so tiny that the scanner could tell a difference? Does this have anything to do with bone density? Did nobody with dainty little hands work at Area 51? Sure, hand scanners might be a little more common nowadays, but Bob has been talking about all of this for around 30 years now, and has never changed his story. Look, skeptics, you might want to rethink your position, since this piece of evidence kinda adds to his credibility. I know, most of us probably didn't need that, but it helps. Number 1, secret documents. Bob has claimed that during his joining the program, he read briefing documents describing the historical involvement of Earth for the past 10,000 years with extraterrestrial beings described as gray aliens from a planet orbiting the twin binary star system Zeta Reticuli. I feel like I mispronounced that, so I apologize, folks. Your girl's tired today. While this may not be the technology we're looking for in terms of a high-tech sense, low-key tech is still tech, and documents require technology. As of September 2019, no extrasolar planets have been found in that system, according to government experts, but we all know that they can lie to us about that. So for the uninitiated, what the heck is this? So it's a wide binary star system in the southern constellation of the Reticulum. From the southern hemisphere, the pair can be seen with, the regular eye, as a double star in very dark skies. Based upon parallax measurements, this system is located at a distance of about 39.3 light years from Earth. Both stars are solar analogs that have characteristics similar to those of the Sun. They belong to the Zeta Herculis moving group of stars that share a common origin. So you might be asking, okay Alexa, what does this have to do with aliens? Well, does everyone remember Skinny Bob? The video that showed up on YouTube in 2011 showing a collection of leaked videos with an alien being interrogated by some government agency. Okay, so it was like a typical gray type entity shown being interviewed and examined, supposedly as some sort of diplomatic exchange, and he says he's from the Zeta Reticuli star system, sent as part of an envoy to discuss matters of mutual concern. According to the videos, the aliens would be escorted by special officers and only meet with high-ranking officials. Although several aliens are claimed to have been present, the one most prominently featured was, Skinny Bob, the one we all know. He's very thin, slouched over, with an oversized bald head, slit-like mouth, large eyes that seem expressive and blink, and claw-like hands. Apparently there were more interviews between 1942 and 1969, but we've only got a few clips, which is pretty typical. Normally you see Skinny Bob sitting at a table during a telepathic interview, and then we see footage of him from head to toe, showing the overall build. We also see a shot of it within a pool of some sort, where there's liquid where it would supposedly sleep. I'm all for a waterbed. Now, apparently the aliens were often filmed without their consent, which kinda went against all of the documents they signed. The diplomatic exchange of it all matches up with what we know about Area 51 being a place for secret meetings though, and more.
Number 5. Well, first and foremost, if you were looking for any proof that the government definitely knows more about aliens than they let on, how about from the mouth of the 3-letter organizations themselves? The CIA released a tweet in 2014, obviously was meant to be taken in a joking manner, but still pretty illuminating, saying that throughout the 50s and 60s, they estimate that 50% of all sightings of unexplained aerial phenomena and UFOs were simply the CIA testing new aircraft. Out of context, the CIA admits they were behind 50% of all UFO sightings is an extremely attention-grabbing headline, and probably what I should have named this video. Would have got you to click better. And it is an attention-grabbing headline. At the time they were testing the Lockheed U-2 spy plane, codenamed Dragon Lady, which was able to fly at altitudes thought unreachable by a one-manned aircraft at the time. We know the CIA will always be a little bit more technologically advanced than they're willing to let on. That's just the nature of shadowy governments. But the conspiracy theorist in me has to wonder, is it even just the littlest bit possible that them releasing this could be a misinformation campaign? I mean, this is just what they're willing to admit, right? Who's to say what they won't admit? What if they put stuff like this out there so the next time you see something odd in the sky, you just dismiss it thinking, oh, that's just the CIA testing airplanes, instead of the more logical, reasonable answer that it's an alien spacecraft observing you from up above? And what if all I'm saying is just wild speculating and tinfoil hat level conspiracies because I'm trying to get views on video? It's more likely than you think. But them admitting they're responsible for most UFO sightings intones to me that they're aware of a lot more UFO sightings that are reported. Makes you wonder how much they research them all. Do you think they look at every blurry cell phone camera video posted to Reddit, or just the really serious ones that make the news? I'm hoping to get some answers someday, and I have a feeling that some of those answers are in this video. It won't all be wild speculation, I promise. And hey, if you want to see more alien stuff, click through. We've got boxes full of declassified documents, NASA stories, and videos that are just out of this world. Get it? So stay subscribed and stay scared, and I'll see you there. Number 4, the Guy Hoddle memo. So it's a pretty much an open book secret that the 3-letter agencies have known about aliens in some way or another since they started writing things down. They don't hide it or pretend to hide it anymore, which is nice. They finally admitted that Area 51 even exists for the first time a couple years ago, so we could all use a little openness in our day-to-day. Let's take a look at one of the FBI's most talked about and most viewed documents, the Guy Hoddle memo. And despite being one of the most seen FBI memos, it's but a single-page document that was never followed up on. Well, it sounds like we should follow up on it. Guy Hoddle was the head of the FBI field office in Washington, and his report was addressed to the head of the FBI, one J. Edgar Hoover. The contents of the report were simple, but shocking. It detailed the descriptive encounter of an agent making a physical sighting of what they believed to be a UFO. It's dated 3 years after the Roswell incident, but it was reported in New Mexico for what it's worth. Here's a quote from the memo. The saucers were described as being circular in shape with raised centers, approximately 50 feet in diameter. Each one was occupied by 3 bodies of human shape but only 3 feet tall, dressed in metallic cloth of a very fine texture. Each body was bandaged in a manner similar to blackout suits used by speed flyers and test pilots. Now, if you ask me, that is almost too perfect, isn't it? I mean, the memo lines up nearly perfectly with the stereotypical, cartoon description of aliens being little gray or green men flying around in flying saucers around New Mexico. The memo goes on to read that the agent claims they had found the saucers because an FBI high-powered radar in the area had detected it, and this radar detecting it had interfered with the controlling mechanism of the crafts. But despite all of this, which really seems like it's the paper trail screaming, proving, hey, aliens are out there, you should go check them out, the memo ends by saying no further evaluation was attempted, and the Hoddle memo was never followed up on, presumably crumpled up and thrown away. Director Hoover, I guess, thought it wasn't worth his time and disregarded it, leaving it now as nothing more than an incredibly odd piece of history.
Number 3, non-human biologics at a crash site. During the same hearing that David Grush dropped the news that the government had UAPs, he dropped another even bigger extraterrestrial bomb on everyone. He claimed to be aware of colleagues who had recovered from non-human biologics derived from UAP crashes. However, when asked to provide evidence to substantiate his claims, Grush again stated that he was not able to provide any more information, as it was classified. But he did describe the unsettling nature of what he witnessed. I have to be very careful here. What I personally witnessed, myself and my wife, was very disturbing. Grush informed the panel that though he could not elaborate on everything in front of the public, he was able and willing to provide more information to select people in a sensitive compartmented information facility. He claims that his testimony was based on information given to him by trusted individuals, who all had a long-standing record of legitimacy. He said that the sources shared proof in photographs, documentation, and official oral testimonies. When asked if he had known of anyone who lost their lives due to inhuman materials, Grush responded, "I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities." Grush said that he'd suffered retaliation within the government for his decision to become a whistleblower, but he hoped that his coming forward would help with future transparency from the government to citizens. What inhuman biologics were seen and found are still a mystery, but many people have theorized as to what exactly Grush meant. He divulged that pilots who recovered from crashes had been affected by the inhuman biologic, which was the assessment that people with direct knowledge of the situation provided Grush. Many agencies and news outlets have since spoken out against David's claims, criticizing him for his outlandish lies, as they put it. I don't think what Grush is saying is accurate. While it's possible he's believing what he's saying, it's an incredible story that really needs some actual verification. So far, the best evidence Grush has come up with, besides his own word, is the government's denial. Even RO director Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick has spoken in opposition of David, stating that David has refused contact with the RO. Kirkpatrick even added on, saying that the hearing was insulting to the officers of the Department of Defense and intelligence community who chose to join RO, many with not unreasonable anxieties about the career risks this would entail. Grush has not responded to any of these criticisms. Here's my opinion on it. I'm just not sure why he would lie, and if he is lying, why? There must be something even deeper going on because, as we know, the government frequently covers up a huge scandal with many smaller ones. What do you think? Number 2, UFO in disguise. Now we're gonna go a little bit south, down to Mexico, where the shocking hearing revealed and presented jaw-dropping extraterrestrial information. A photo that first appears to be a close-up of a star or the sun is claimed to be a UFO. The strange thing about this star, though, was it wasn't in space. It was in the sky, and it wasn't burning out the eyes of onlookers. It's described as a spherical object with 3 layers, seemingly made of light or energy. Many have commented that it looks as though there is a UFO in the center of the orb. A user commented, "A ring or layers may not be the craft itself, but an effect of the camera. I'm not saying it's not a UAP and all camera stuff. There is without a doubt a glowing UAP up there. Just saying the layered look appears to be the common effect that happens when taking photos of bright things in the sky from a distance." They further noted the similarities between this photo and the description that Charles Halt provided in regards to the Rendlesham incident. For those of you who are unaware of the Rendlesham Forest incident, I'll give you a quick summary of it. In December of 1980, a series of sightings, all claiming to have seen strange, unexplained lights, were reported. The lights were seen near a United States Air Force occupied base in England. Many personnel claimed to have seen these lights, including Colonel Charles Halt. Furthered the curiosity when he stated that he also saw UFOs among the lights. Some men drew diagrams and pictures to try to record what the lights looked like. Halt described that the lights were red, sun-like light. Sun-like light. Adding, "It's like the pupil of an eye looking at you, winking, and the flash is so bright to the starscope that, it almost burns your eye." Users have also released their own photos online of images similar to what had been released. There have been no official answers regarding what the Rendlesham incident was, or what the similar disguised UFO from the Mexico hearing was. Finally, number 1, non-human mummy. As always, I saved the best for last. During the same Mexico hearing, a researcher presented 2 unidentified inhuman beings to the world. Yes, Jamie Masson is a journalist and researcher on UAPs. Jamie entered the hearing with 2 boxes, each carrying what he claims are the small stuffed bodies of extraterrestrial beings. Jamie and a colleague ran extensive testing on both of the specimens. X-rays, 3D reconstructions, macro and microscopic analysis, DNA analysis, and just about every test you could possibly run on a creature. They found that the creatures were 100%, without a doubt, non-human. He describes the creatures, stating, "They are 60 centimeters long, covered by a white powder that, through electron microscopy, we identify as diatom powder, which allows the desiccation of the bodies as well as the absence of the generation of bacteria, fungi, and cadaveric fauna. The presence of this dust allows the perfect conservation by desiccation of these bodies, causing a natural conservation process over time, which we were able to calculate by applying the carbon-14 test, which indicated and dated an average of 1,000 years old." They claim to have recovered the creatures in Peru in 2017. They were able to identify that one of the creatures was 1,800 years old and the other was 700 years old. Each had only 3 fingers and 3 toes, a head, a neck, abdomen, and limbs. The bones were resistant, light but strong. Jamie compared them to the bones of a bird. The skull has the characteristics which further display how light yet resistant the bones are. The skull also has a lot of space for what they would figure would be a brain and eyes. The brain would be incredibly large and the eyes would have had an amazing field of vision. They were able to tell that the species consumed food through swallowing opposed to chewing. The bone formation in the neck is not found in primate species like humans, monkeys, or apes. They were able to find evidence of eggs, which prove that the species was biological and organic, as the replication would be impossible to falsify, according to Jamie. The creatures had strange fingerprints. Opposed to being a circular pattern like ours, theirs were completely straight and horizontally linear. The species also have metal implants that are attached below the skin near the surface. The implants are alloys of several metals, including osmium and cadmium, which are both used for satellite telecommunications. They compared the DNA with over 1 million different species and found that there's a significant difference between all of them. The studies that proved how different this species is were conducted in various countries. The results showed that 70% of the genetic material is known, but 30% isn't. This difference is absolutely insane. The difference between humans and primates is less than 5%, and the difference between humans and bacteria is less than 15%. 30% is huge. Jamie closed his presentation by saying, "I can affirm that these bodies are 100% real, organic, and biological, that at the time they had a life and are irrefutable evidence in themselves. We are facing the paradigm of describing a new species or the opportunity to accept that there has been contact with other non-human beings that were drawn and pointed out in the past, in various cultures throughout the world, such as Peru, Egypt, and Mexico, and that today we can accept their existence among and with us." Many have challenged Jamie's claims, stating that similar discoveries have been forged in the past. By him. They also added that they do not have any actual proof that any of the tests were ever carried out. But I don't know. It doesn't sound completely outlandish to me. I mean, humans do have a track record of wiping out humanoid species. I mean, just think of the Neanderthals. I wouldn't be surprised if humans just got jealous of the creature's superior intellect and decided, let's get rid of them.
Number 5. Want to catch these alien hands? So in the realm of mysterious artifacts that tend to defy earthly explanations, the giant hand discovered in a Peruvian cave back in 2017 stands as quite the tantalizing enigma, if you ask me. And since you're here, Brian Forster and his team associated with Hidden Inca Tours received this peculiar specimen from a group of explorers who stumbled upon it near Cusco. What's more is they claim to have found an elongated humanoid skull and a small mummified alien in proximity to the giant hand. Although the explorers kept the exact location under wraps, get it? They allowed Forrester to examine the anomalous artifacts, if you will. X-ray analysis unveiled a startling revelation. Each of the hand's 3 fingers possessed an astonishing 6 bones, in stark contrast to the human hand's, 3. Unnamed physicians, perplexed by their findings, classified the hand and skull as biological objects with genuine animal bones and skin tissues. Now the enigma deepens as they asserted that these specimens bore no resemblance to any known earthly creatures. While this discovery invokes images of extraterrestrial origins, conclusive evidence remains elusive. UFO hunter Scott C. Waring of UFOsightingsdaily.com emphasized the hand's otherworldly nature, yet DNA analysis leaves room for ambiguity, as we have no extraterrestrial DNA to really compare it to. Instead, the results only affirm that this mysterious hand does not correspond to any known species of this earth. The existence of the skull adds complexity to the mystery, raising questions about potential cooperative efforts between various alien entities within the, cave tunnel. The implications of this discovery are nothing short of mind-boggling. It challenges our understanding of biology, anthropology, and the boundaries of what may lie beyond our planet. The giant alien hand, along with its associated artifacts, remains a subject of intense scrutiny for researchers and enthusiasts alike, leaving us with more questions than answers in the quest to unravel its true origin and significance. Number 4. Alien Tooth Wheel. Just when I think I've seen it all, I'm proven otherwise. 300 million years ago, our planet was a vastly different place. Dinosaurs were still a distant dream, and complex machinery seemed like pure science fiction. Yet in the vast reaches of Russia, a mysterious artifact has been uncovered, shrouded in mystery and controversy. Imagine the astonishment of Dmitry, a resident of Vladivostok, when he stumbled upon an unusual piece of coal while preparing to heat his home. This wasn't your typical lump of ancient carbon, it held a metallic secret, a seemingly artificial metal object, reminiscent of tooth rails used in microscopes and electronics, was embedded within the coal. This discovery raises numerous perplexing questions. For starters, how could such an artifact, bearing a striking resemblance to modern technology, exist in a geological stratum dating back 300 million years? The Voice of Russia reported that when geologists examined the metal object, it exhibited an astonishing lightness and softness, consisting of 98% aluminum and 2% magnesium. These findings led to the unsettling implication that this was not a natural occurrence, but an artificial creation. What truly baffled researchers was the object's shape, resembling a contemporary tooth wheel. The regularity of its structure, with 6 identical teeth, defied natural explanations. Once again, it's a conundrum that challenges our understanding of ancient technology, and who might have crafted such a device in a time when humans did not yet roam the earth? Speculation abounds, regarding the origin of this metal piece. Some suggest an extraterrestrial connection, given the artifact's anachronistic nature. However, not everybody is convinced. Geologist Sharon Hill, known as I Doubt It, dismissed the story as laughable. She questioned the lack of publication in scientific journals and the reliance on the discoverer's word. The notion of an alien origin for aluminum was met with skepticism. Despite the intrigue, the scientific community remains cautious, insisting on further tests and analysis to uncover the truth behind this perplexing find. Let me know in the comments what you think, by the way, because as usual, I'm on team alien artifact that should probably be left alone for our own goodwill. If it's been buried or, covered up, it's probably for a reason.
Number 3, the Antikythera mechanism. This mechanism is an ancient find that is thought to be the world's first analog computer. It was discovered in a shipwreck near the coast of Antikythera in 1901. The device's complexity and potential purpose have birthed several wild theories about its origin and function. One theory is that the mechanism was an astronomical calculator or some kind of ancient mechanical model of the stars in space. This theory is based on the numerous gears and dials within the device, which would have allowed it to track the positions of celestial bodies, including the sun and the moon. This would have been a valuable tool for ancient astronomers and philosophers in understanding the movements of our solar system. Others suggest it might have served as a navigational instrument, helping sailors determine their position at sea by predicting celestial events, suggesting that the complex nature of the mechanism could have been used to determine critical dates and times, assisting in navigation efforts and predicting astronomical events like eclipses. It has also been proposed that the mechanism was employed as an orrery, a device that demonstrates the motions of celestial bodies, or even as an educational tool, aiding in the teaching of astronomy and complex scientific concepts in ancient Greece. The device's exact purpose and the extent of its capabilities are still topics of passionate debate. The fact that it was created more than 2,000 years ago is a testament to the advanced knowledge and engineering skills of the ancient Greeks, or to the knowledge of an otherworldly being. While many questions about the mechanism remain unanswered, it continues to be a symbol of fascination, still inspiring research and exploration into its true nature and purpose. Number 2, the crystal skulls. The crystal skulls are a set of strange artifacts that have fascinated both archaeologists and conspiracy theorists for so many years. These crystal skulls are precisely what they sound like: human skull-shaped carvings made from various types of quartz crystal. Most of them date back to pre-Columbian South American civilizations, specifically the Aztec, Mixtec, and Maya. The theory surrounding these skulls is what continues to make them so popular and intriguing, and let me tell you, there are a lot of theories. Some people believe that the skulls are ancient relics with supernatural or extraterrestrial origins, while others think they possess mystical or healing powers. One popular theory is that the crystal skulls were created by advanced ancient civilizations that possessed knowledge far beyond what we currently assume and understand. Some parts of this theory suggests that these crystals hold the secrets of lost technologies and predictions about future events. Then, of course, there's the theory that suggests the skulls are linked to extraterrestrial beings. This theory further assumes that these artifacts were gifts or messages from ancient alien visitors to Earth, gifted with the intention to guide or enlighten the less advanced beings they had stumbled across. Humans. Skeptics, however, assume that these crystal skulls are simply modern creations, likely made during the late 1800s or the early 1900s, and then were falsely aged so they would appear as ancient artifacts. Some well-documented forgeries and the absence of and the absence of context from many of these skulls do add a lot of substance to skeptics' beliefs. Despite this, the mystery surrounding the crystal skulls continue to capture the imaginations of curious minds and fuel a lot of debates about their origins, purpose, and theorized mystical properties. Whether they're being viewed as ancient relics, products of elaborate hoaxes, or otherworldly symbols, the crystal skulls have become a fascinating and intriguing find for the world of archaeology. Number 1, the Baghdad Battery. The Baghdad Battery is a strange historical puzzle that has raised questions about the technological capabilities of ancient civilizations. The battery was discovered near Baghdad, Iraq, and dates back to around 2,000 years ago, consisting of a clay jar, a copper tube, and an iron rod. What makes this find so confusing and perplexing is the fact that it dates back around 2,000 years, yet it resembles something extremely modern: a battery. However, before we get too carried away with visions of ancient Mesopotamians charging their smartphones, it's important to note that the true purpose of the battery remains unknown and highly debated. The basic concept is that it could generate a small electric current if filled with an acidic solution. Some researchers believe it may have had a more mundane purpose, like electroplating, which is a technique that's used in modern days to apply a thin layer of metal to objects. Others believe that it was an early form of medical treatment, possibly for pain relief, but there's There's no evidence that definitively confirms that the battery was created for this, and it isn't linked to any significant electrical advancements in ancient times, which, we would probably notice. But then that begs the question, is it even human? If it was truly human, why wasn't the technology spread throughout the world? Every technological advancement made throughout history was quickly spread through thousands of communities. A battery would not have just been disregarded. Even if it was mistaken or called a form of magic, people would still uncover it. It would have still been spread. So that leads me to think this was not a human creation. Otherworldly civilizations could be thousands of years ahead of us in advancements. If this battery was from them, honestly, it would kind of make a lot more sense than it being a battery used by humans.
Number 5. Build a UFO. In the 1989 interview that started these leaks, the claim sounded like Hollywood sci-fi. Months later though, when his identity was revealed, Bob said he worked at a secret facility that I'll talk more about later, where alien technology was being reverse engineered, meaning, taken apart to figure out how it worked and whether the Pentagon could duplicate it. Look, the premise seems a lot less absurd now. Bob said that his job was to help with the reverse engineering of one of 9 flying saucers, which he alleged were extraterrestrial in origin. He claims that one of the flying saucers, the one he coined the sport model, was manufactured out of a metallic substance similar in appearance and touch to liquid titanium. Bob said that the propulsion of the studied vehicle ran on an antimatter reactor and was fueled by the chemical element with atomic number 115, which once again, I'll touch on later, I promise. In a subsequent interview that November, Bob appeared unmasked and under his own name, where he claimed that his job interview for work at the facility was with contractor EG&G and that his employer was the United States Navy. Bob said the craft he was working on was dismantled, and the reactor he studied was topped by a sphere or semi-sphere which emitted a force field capable of repulsing human flesh. He further explained that the craft was split into 2 main levels. So the reactor was positioned at the center of the upper level, with an antenna extending to the top, surrounded by 3 gravity amplifiers. These were connected to gravity emitters on the lower level, which can rotate 180 degrees to output a gravity beam or anti-gravity wave. In 1989, Bob said the seeds of the saucer he saw were approximately tiny human-sized, and that he had seen alien cadavers of a corresponding size. He's mentioned that the main craft he worked on would aim its belly to the target, and then bring all of the amplifiers to power and fly off in that direction, with the belly or bottom forward. If that description of a spacecraft tilting sounds familiar, I'm assuming you're familiar with the gimbal UFO? So the Pentagon released the video back in 2017, where naval pilots encountered a fleet of the unknown craft off of the coast of Florida in 2015, and have since had dozens of similar encounters. So in that specific video, there's a mechanistic turn against the wind without deceleration, which means a craft without rotors, heat signatures, tail fins, and no tail number, and it was moving in a way that is counterintuitive to aeronautics. So when Bob saw that video, he said it had to be a gravity-propelled craft, which mimics the propulsion system that he described. So okay, if you don't believe me on that one, how about we look at another now famous UFO incident, the 2004 Tic Tac encounter. I've talked about this many times. So the Navy pilot who engaged the Tic Tac, Black Aces commander Dave Fravor, says he doesn't believe the astonishing craft was made on Earth and that the propulsion might be anti-gravity. So when Bob was shown the Tic Tac video for the first time, it immediately reminded him of the sport mode, which, like I said, that was his name for the craft stashed in the desert. And he says it's the exact same propulsion system. Former Pentagon intelligence officer Lou Elizondo was in charge of ATIP, the secret Pentagon study. He told the I-Team one goal of the project was to determine the physics of UFOs, how they can achieve the seemingly impossible. The military came to believe that the craft relied on special metamaterials, stuff that can't be made with known technology. And hey, Bob made similar claims decades ago and was ridiculed. So what do you know? Now the Pentagon's on the same page all of a sudden. Number 4, what is Area 51? So sure, today everybody knows that Area 51 is the common name of a highly classified United States Air Force facility within the Nevada Test and Training Range. As a remote detachment administered by Edwards Air Force Base, the facility is officially called Homey Airport or Groom Lake, depending on who you ask. Okay, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Don't tell me. I'm sure it'll come to me eventually. Oh, I got it. It's home to all things unknown, and lots of alien and UFO believers, such as myself, are pretty sure that that's where all the flying discs and more tend to be housed. It's commonly thought to support the development and testing of experimental aircraft and weapons systems. Now, it has never been declared a secret base, but all research and occurrences in Area 51 are top secret or sensitive compartmented information. So make of that what you will. The CIA only publicly acknowledged the base's existence on June 25th of 2013, following a Freedom of Information Act request filed in 1905 and declassified documents detailing its history and purpose. So, how does Bob play into all this? Well, we're gonna go back to 1989 when he appeared in that interview with investigative reporter George Knapp on Las Vegas TV station Klaus under the pseudonym Dennis and with his face hidden to discuss his employment at S4, a subsidiary facility he claimed exists near the Nellis Air Force Base installation known as Area 51. And once again, this was back in 1989, before Area 51 was the common knowledge it is today. He claimed that said facility was adjacent to Papoose Lake, which is located south of the main Area 51 facility at Groom Lake. He claimed the site consisted of concealed aircraft hangars built into a mountainside. He said that while walking down a hallway at S4 once, he briefly glanced through a door window and saw what he interpreted as two men in lab coats facing down and talking to something with long arms. Now, he doesn't think he saw an actual alien, but speculated that he saw a doll used as a reference for the size of the alleged aliens. So everything I'm discussing today about Bob probably took place at that mysterious place out in the desert. Area 51 is also believed to house material recovered at Roswell, the study of their occupants, and the manufacturing of aircraft based on alien technology. And also might be a place to host meetings or joint undertakings with extraterrestrials. It tends to be where the development of exotic energy weapons for the Strategic Defense Initiative or other weapons programs happens, possibly where they're working on projects to do with weather control, time travel and teleportation technology, and exotic propulsion systems related to the Aurora program. So many of these tend to do with, underground facilities at Groom or Papoose Lake. So, the S4 location first talked about by Bob, which is 8.5 miles south and includes claims of a transcontinental underground railroad system and a disappearing airstrip named the Cheshire Airstrip, after Lewis Carroll's Cheshire Cat, which briefly appears when water is sprayed onto its camouflaged asphalt and engineering based on alien technology. Number 3. Carpool to Groom Mountain. The stories about trips to the edge of Groom Mountain offer quite the glimpse into the mysterious world of classified government facilities. From what I've managed to gather, Bob, another government UFO expert by the name of John Lear, and some other folks took frequent trips to the area, recording footage that has since been hidden by the government, so sadly, we don't have access to it today. It's remarkable that Bob and his acquaintances managed to evade security patrols and record a videotape of strange glowing objects ascending from the mountain. For context, Groom Mountain is located over at Area 51. The super secretive government base where most government alien business tends to happen. The area is connected to the internal Nevada test site road network, with paved roads leading south to Mercury and west to Yucca Flat. If I pronounce that wrong, I apologize. Leading northeast on the lake, the wide and well-maintained Groom Lake Road runs through a pass in the Jumbled Hills. The road formerly led to mines in the Groom Basin, but has since improved since their closure. Its winding course runs past a security checkpoint, but the restricted area around the base extends way farther east. So John Lear's involvement adds another layer of complexity and validity to all of this. As a former CIA pilot who has spoken openly about his experiences near Groom Lake in 1989, this raises some questions about what he might have witnessed or been privy to. This revelation only adds to the enduring enigma surrounding Area 51 and Bob's claims, making it a captivating addition in the ever-evolving tapestry of conspiracy theories and government secrecy, forever giving them side-eye. Number 2, giving credibility to the gimbal video. If you don't already know, what exactly is the gimbal UFO sighting? And why does it have experts scratching their head and conspiracy theorists, hi there, buzzing with excitement? Let's dive in. So the gimbal UFO sighting took place in 2015, but was not publicly disclosed until December of 2017 when the New York Times broke the story. The video in question that got all the hubbub was recorded by US Navy pilots during a training exercise off of the coast of Florida. What makes the sighting so extraordinary is the way the unidentified flying object moves. So in the video in question, we see a sleek white object with no visible wings or exhaust plumes hovering in the sky, and the most striking aspect is its rotation. If I sound like a broken record, hold on. The object seems to rotate or gimbal effortlessly, maintaining a stable orientation despite its high-speed movement. This level of maneuverability defies the laws of physics as we understand them. Gee, where have I said that before today? When Bob saw the original video, he said it had to be a gravity-propelled craft which mimics the propulsion system that he described. Now, let's unpack some of the key elements that make this sighting so intriguing. First and foremost, the behavior of the object challenges our understanding of aerodynamics and propulsion. It appears to defy the principles of conventional aircraft. Once again, there are no visible means of propulsion, no wings, no visible signs of conventional jet engines. This has led some experts to speculate about advanced propulsion systems or even extraterrestrial technology. Another perplexing aspect is the lack of visible exhaust or heat signatures. Typically, high-speed objects generate significant heat, and their engines produce discernible thermal signals. signals. Yet in the gimbal video, there's no such indication. This raises questions about the nature of the technology involved and how it manages to remain undetectable by conventional means. Moreover, the gimbal UFO's ability to rotate without changing its trajectory or speed is particularly confounding. In conventional aircraft, such rapid rotations would create immense gravitational forces, rendering the maneuvers physically impossible for human pilots, which has led some to ponder the possibility of advanced drone technology or, once again, extraterrestrial involvement. One of the most significant revelations regarding the gimbal UFO sighting is that it is just one of several similar incidents encountered by US Navy personnel. These sightings occurred in restricted military airspace, making it highly unlikely that these were civilian or foreign military crafts. The consistency in the behavior of these objects across multiple encounters adds weight to the argument that it is something truly exceptional and unexplainable that is happening in our skies. While the possibility of classified military technology can't be dismissed entirely, the lack of any official confirmation or explanation from the US government only fuels, our truth. This sighting represents one of the most enigmatic and thought-provoking episodes in the history of UFO encounters. And with Bob's credibility, its behavior challenges the limits of our understanding of this entire world. Sure, while we don't have all the exact answers, and it's certain that this incident, along with others like it, continues to spark discussions about the existence of UFOs and aliens, those are mysteries that we may never know, and thanks to Bob, I think they're pretty credible. The gimbal UFO sighting reminds us that the universe is a vast and mysterious place, and there's much we have yet to discover and comprehend. Number 1, bone density scanners. I wanted to make y'all pay attention today, so I saved the most head-scratching information until last. So once again, Bob, a man whose assertions about reverse engineering extraterrestrial spacecrafts at, Area 51 have long raised some eyebrows, but there's been some newfound support in the form of quite the revealing photograph. No, not that kind. Not here. Thanks to filmmaker Jeremy Corbell's tenacity, Bob's narrative has been bolstered, if you will, with tangible evidence. The photograph hails from a classified US government program conducted at Nellis Air Force Range, located very close to, Area 51. What's remarkable though is how closely the depicted hand scanner aligns with Lazar's detailed descriptions. When presented with the photo, Bob was taken aback by the confirmation and reflected, saying, "I never thought I would see one of these again." So what did he see? It was a biometric scanner, he explained, designed to measure the length of hand bones to grant access to the mysterious SF area. There were slits and pins and a light fixture above it, and it scanned your hand to measure the bone length in your hands. Pardon me, I'm suddenly very curious about how the length of my bones confirms that I'm human. Interesting. Were aliens really so tiny that the scanner could tell a difference? Did nobody with dainty little hands work at Area 51? Sure, hand scanners might be a little more common nowadays, but Bob has been talking about all of this for around 30 years now and has never changed his story. His skeptics might need to rethink their positions, as this unexpected piece of evidence casts quite the shadow of credibility over his extraordinary claims. Granted, I doubt most of us needed the additional proof at this point, but let me know if that helps at all. Number 5. An ancient fortress. Outside the old Inca capital of Cusco, a fortress called Sacsayhuaman is hanging out in the Peruvian Andes. Built from enormous stones that have been chiseled and stacked together like a jigsaw puzzle, some say this fortress could be the work of an ancient civilization that had help from interstellar friends. The 1,000-year-old interlocking fortress walls are made of rocks that weigh as much as 360 tons each, and which were carried more than 20 miles before being lifted and fit into place with laser-like precision. How an ancient culture accomplished such a feat of engineering is a fun little problem to solve. Turns out the Inca were as adept at building houses and fortified complexes as they were as watching the sky and keeping calendars. As a matter of fact, this fortress isn't the only example of this intricate masonry. Similar walls exist throughout the Inca Empire, including one in Cusco where a 12-angled stone has been carefully wedged into place. Something I'll bring up a lot today is that the marvels of ancient architecture just can't be explained by what we know about history. Sure, by modern standards some of it can be explained, but our technology had to evolve to that point first. The only way it can make sense in history is if we got help from a more advanced species. Number 4. Graffiti inside the Great Pyramids. In the heart of the city of El Giza stands the Giza Pyramid Complex, also known as the Necropolis. This architectural marvel contains 3 pyramids: the Pyramid of Khafre, the Pyramid of Menkaure, and of course the Great Pyramid of Giza. Although each was created for a different pharaoh, many historians are convinced that their collective design is cohesive and intentional, as the arrangement of these structures is possibly a representation of the Orion constellation. The complex's crown jewel, though, is the Great Pyramid. Most believe it was erected under the watchful eye of the pharaoh Khufu to be a tomb where the king would complete his transformation into a god in the afterlife. Standing around 146.7 meters high and stretching 234.4 meters wide, it looms above everything around it. It was assembled from 2.5 million stone blocks, some of which came from over 500 miles away, which is particularly amazing when you consider that they didn't have the use of wheels at the time, and that construction only took 20 years. If that sounds like a lot to anyone, try living in Toronto, where construction takes that long to renovate like a single street. And by the time it's done being renovated, workers take so long they have to do it again. Whoever designed and built the pyramids had incredibly detailed knowledge and architectural skill. When completed, the pyramid towered over the city, and its corners aligned almost exactly with the points of a compass. In general, Egyptians often oriented structures to true north pretty precisely, likely using stars such as Polaris to orient their work, and the Great Pyramid is no exception. The origins and composition of the Great Pyramid, our oldest wonder of the world and its slightly less famous kin, have long confounded scholars. So how did engineers manage to achieve these seemingly impossible feats that building these masterpieces would require? Well, the truth is, nobody knows for sure. While some believe that construction workers may have used large ramps to transport the stones, this theory has been largely disproven, as there is little archaeological evidence to support the claim. Naturally, theories arguing that aliens must have constructed the pyramid have come into play. It's true that it would have been difficult for humans to build the pyramids, and there's precious little historical evidence of how they were built. Citing this, as well as the architectural and scientific questions that surround the pyramids, many people, myself included, have proposed that aliens came to Earth in ancient times and helped kickstart civilizations. According to these theories, the aliens were instrumental in helping ancient Egyptians build their masterpieces. Believers like us argue that in order to design the pyramids as they are, one would need a bird's eye view, the kind that can be provided from, say, a flying saucer. They also believe that in order to create an object that obeys the so-called golden ratio, a mathematical relationship based on the special number phi, the Egyptians would have needed help from outside sources. Hey look, the alien theory has persisted to the present day. In 2001, Russian scientist Dr. Viktor Ivanovich claimed that the KGB had found ancient alien remains inside of the Great Pyramid. Certainly the Great Pyramid's inner network of shafts, passageways, and chambers is so intricate that it's not hard to understand why people believed that some kind of divinity or superintelligence was involved. Also, the only hieroglyphs inside are graffiti, alleged to be left behind by those who worked on the structure as a signature, which only further supports my theory on the aliens only knowing that to communicate with us by. Like time capsules, the pyramids are physical symbols of ancient wisdom. Made of glittering gold limestone and always remaining around a cool 20 degrees centigrade inside, they provide glimpses of an ancient society that once neared the kind of technological intelligence we possess today. Hey, maybe in 2,000 years, historians will speculate about the extraterrestrial origins of our fallen civilization, and by then, they'll be able to consult actual aliens for help. Number 3, contact with Zeta Reticuli. So Bob has claimed that during his, joining the program, he read briefing documents describing the historical involvement of Earth for the past 10,000 years with extraterrestrial beings described as gray aliens from a planet orbiting the twin binary system Zeta Reticuli. As of September 2019, no extrasolar planets have been found in the system, according to government experts, but we all know that they can lie to us about that. So for the uninitiated, what the heck is Zeta Reticuli? So this is a wide binary star system in the southern constellation of Reticulum. From the southern hemisphere, the pair can be seen with the regular eye as a double star in very dark skies. Based on parallax measurements, this system is located at a distance of about 39.3 light years from Earth. Both stars are solar analogs that have characteristics similar to those of the Sun. They belong to the Zeta Herculis moving group of stars that share a common origin. So you might be asking, okay Alexa, what does this have to do with aliens? So does anybody remember Skinny Bob? If not, I'll refresh your memory. So a very curious video showed up on YouTube in 2011, showing a collection of leaked videos where you can see an alien being interrogated by some sort of government agency of sorts. It's a typical gray type entity shown being interviewed and examined, supposedly as part of some sort of diplomatic exchange, and here's the moment you've been waiting for. He says he's from the Zeta Reticuli star system, sent as part of an envoy to discuss matters of mutual concern. According to the videos, the aliens would be escorted by special officers and only meet with high-ranking officials. Although several aliens are claimed to have been present, the one most prominently featured was given the nickname Skinny Bob. The alien appears as a very thin, slouched over figure with an oversized bald head, slit-like mouth, large eyes that seem expressive and blink, and claw-like hands. Now there was apparently a whole series of interviews conducted with the creature between 1942 and 69, although only a few clips have managed to get leaked out. The most well-known clip simply shows Skinny Bob sitting at a table, apparently in a telepathic interview, after which we see footage of the alien from head to toe, showing its disproportionately long arms and overall build. After that, there is a shot of it within a pool of some sort of liquid where it was supposedly asleep. Now, according to the videos, the aliens were often filmed without their knowledge or agreement, with document 072-E supposedly describing an incident in 1961 where 3 of the beings realized they were being secretly filmed by a hidden device, which was considered a violation of their agreement. There was a treaty that stipulated that photographs and filming of the entities would not be allowed unless specific permission was given. The diplomatic exchange of it all matches up with what we know about Area 51 being a place for secret meetings and more. Number 2, Men in Black are erasing history. So yeah, it's no secret the government has the power to erase or cover up whatever they want. And what they've done to Bob in an attempt to discredit him is a very clear example of that control. So Bob is adamant that his employment and education records have been erased and modified. So remember how I mentioned that he's a physicist? So Bob claims to have obtained master's degrees in physics from MIT and in electronics from Caltech, but mysteriously, both universities show no record of him. Now I get one institution losing records can be explained, as like a clerical error, but both losing records are a little suspicious. Earlier, I also mentioned how Bob claimed that his job interview for work at the facility was with contractor EG&G, and that his employer was the United States Navy, right? Well, EG&G stated it had no records on him, and his employment at a Nellis Air Force Base subsidiary has also been discredited by skeptics, as well as the United States Air Force. Once again, discredited or simply just erased by the government. Bob claims to have worked as a physicist during his tenure at the Los Alamos Meson Physics facility, but an inquiry into his position revealed his role to have been a technician for a contractor firm, and that he worked neither as a physicist or for Los Alamos. Not to sound like a broken record, but it's clearly the Men in Black at work here, and skeptics just need to understand that. Number 1, Element 115. Alrighty, the moment we've all been waiting for. What the heck is Element 115 and what does it do? So Bob has claimed that the propulsion of the studied vehicle that he reverse engineered ran on an antimatter reactor and was fueled by the chemical element with atomic number 115, which at the time was provisionally named unempentium and had not yet been artificially created. It was first synthesized in 2003 and later named moscovium. He said that the propulsion system relied on a stable isotope of E115, which allegedly generates a gravity wave that allowed the vehicle to fly and to evade visual detection by bending light around it. Now, no stable isotopes of moscovium have yet been synthesized. All have proven extremely radioactive, decaying in a few hundred milliseconds. In 2017, Bob's workplace was raided by the FBI and local police, which he theorizes was to recover Element 115, a substance he said he kind of kept from the government lab. I don't blame him.
Number 5. Hypnotic regression. Many people who claim to have been abducted by aliens are unable to remember a lot of the specific details of their abductions. Because of this and the public stigma against people with alien experiences, many people choose to never come forward, or their stories are written off as delusion. But in the spirit of giving people the benefit of the doubt, let's talk about a certain woman's experience with hypnotic regression. A woman who claims she was abducted by aliens was put under hypnosis in order to give a documentary crew information about the visitors from other worlds. When asked how aliens are able to travel at such incredible speeds, she responded with the following: "I can't explain it, but it's like if they want to get from one point to another point, they remove what's in between, so they don't have to travel that distance. They are instantly from there to there." When asked why aliens are studying humans, the response was, "They are very wary of humankind. Mankind is progressing technology-wise, and soon he's going to come across technology that will allow him to peel back the layers of dimensions. And they want to know all about man for their own benefit. Man's warlike, aggressive, an animal. He's in possession of technology that is more than he is. There's no balance. And they're very wary that he's now on the threshold of many breakthroughs, one of which is peeling back dimensions. It's like an onion skin. You peel back one layer, and there's another one underneath, and another one underneath, and another one underneath. The same with dimensions. They're scared. Do aliens really study humanity out of a fear of what we will do once we discover interdimensional travel? And if so, how do they feel about all the UFOs we have apparently shot down? What do species historically do with groups that they are afraid of? What fate awaits the human race at the hands of these interplanetary visitors? Number 4. Sam the Sandown Clown. Our next story comes from the January-February edition of the British UFO Research Association Journal and concerns an anonymous man going by the alias of Mr. Y, who claims that one October night in the year 1970, he was driving to visit a friend when he saw something hovering over the swamp to his right. It was a huge UFO with several different multicolored orb-like lights brightly illuminating the craft. He got out of his vehicle to observe the craft for a moment and then continued on his way. He looked out his window and realized that the craft was now following him, its lights spinning. Mr. Y got to his friend's house and the friend was amazed at the guests that had followed him there before disappearing into a nearby tree line. For years, Mr. Y would see the red orbs following him from time to time, watching him and stalking him. Doubting that anyone would believe him, he kept these encounters to himself until 1973, when his 7-year-old daughter Faye and her friend were playing near Lake Common Road when they heard an eerie wailing sound. They followed the sound to a nearby meadow, and the wailing stopped. They walked over a small bridge when suddenly a blue-gloved hand with 3 fingers appeared from under the bridge. They looked in the small river and saw a strange figure standing in the middle holding a book. He was described as being 7 feet tall and without a neck. He was wearing an odd and tattered costume consisting of a green tunic with a red collar, white pants, and a pointed hat with a black ball on top and 2 antennae. He had a pale white face, lips that never moved, red hair, and triangle holes for eyes. The children watched in shock as the figure hobbled over to a strange metal hut. Not long after, they saw the figure again as he wailed, and then spoke into a microphone asking if they were still there. He then communicated by writing in his book, saying that his name was Sam. They asked if he was a man, and he said no. They asked if he was a ghost, and he said, well, not really, but in a way I am. He said that there were others like him and that he was afraid of being attacked by humans. He invited them into his metal hut, which was filled with wooden furniture and elaborate knobs. The children hung out with Sam for an hour before leaving, and a year later, she told her father about the encounter, telling him that there had been men nearby fixing a post who had acted as though they could not see the strange creature. He had trouble believing her, but he had had enough experiences with aliens of his own that he had to consider the possibility that it was real. Did Mr. Y's daughter really see a strange alien in the woods, or is this just the overactive imagination of a child? In an age where spacecraft are being seen all over the world at an alarming rate, we really can't rule anything out. And what of the UFO stalking Mr. Y? What were they hoping to see? And why was he selected to be the subject of their curiosity? This mystery will likely never be fully unraveled. Number 3. Aliens take a baby. Our next entry comes courtesy of phantomsandmonsters.com and describes a 14-year-old visiting the home of some seniors and seeing something more terrifying than they could possibly imagine. As they themselves told it, I witnessed an alien abduction back in 2002 when I was 14. A friend of mine wanted me to help her grandparents set up their computer. I said sure and rode my bicycle to their house. I got there and clouds appeared, so I decided to make this a pretty quick visit. I set up the computer and installed some software for them, showing them all how it works and such. They go back and sit on the couch while I get my backpack to get ready to leave, as their other granddaughter, who is about 6 years old, was sleeping in the other room. All of a sudden, a cold breeze went through the room. It was odd, as all the doors and windows were shut. The grandparents looked towards the kitchen, and what I saw made me freeze in place. There were 3 creatures standing in the kitchen. 2 of them were short, gray alien creatures, with thicker necks than usually described, with the eyes closer to the sides of their heads. They wore silver jumpsuits. In between them was a taller creature that looked like a humanoid mantis, wearing a black robe with a yellow stripe going down the middle. They walked to another room, and a minute later returned with the robed creature, carrying the granddaughter in its arms. It's looking at me, and I get the feeling it knows who I am. I don't know why I got the feeling, but I did. I was very scared. The grandparents were looking at them too, but not doing anything. I thought, screw this, and fought off all the fear I could and clumsily charged towards them. I didn't even make 3 steps before the grandfather stopped me and told me they will bring her back. The creatures didn't move and continued to look at me. I couldn't get any more words out of my throat because I didn't even know what to think at this point. All of a sudden, a light stretched around them and they vanished. An odd glow remained for a few seconds before fading. After a minute of awkward silence and the grandfather father repeating, "She will be brought back," soon I decided to leave. I rode my bicycle home as fast as I could while looking back, hoping that nothing was following me. I didn't sleep that night after I got home. The next day, I told my friend what had happened, and she told me it has happened before. The grandparents and other family members have tried to stop it, but to no avail. They just accepted it with a look of defeat and moved on. The granddaughter was brought back after a few hours. Not long after I witnessed this incident, their whole family moved elsewhere. I've heard from other people who claimed to experience similar events, and I feel they are legit. Why are aliens taking babies away from their families? What are they hoping to learn? And is there some way to stop them? One can hope, but it seems unlikely. Number 2, dream or abduction. This next story is from an anonymous Reddit user who claimed to be abducted and experimented on by aliens before waking up at home with injuries related to the experiment. As he told the story, in July of 2015, back when I was 19, I lived in a house in Southport, Sacramento with 3 other friends. I woke up one night to a light coming through the ceiling of my room, and it lifted me out of my bed. Next thing I know, I'm in some kind of chair and unable to control my body, like I was drugged with something. There were guys that were not human men, but gray people with large black almond-shaped eyes doing stuff with what seemed like medical instruments and machines. I was very terrified. I was unarmed, naked, unable to move. I was so scared. One of them was touching the machine that put the tube down my throat and into my stomach. His hand got close to my face because he had to adjust something holding my head in place. I remember getting a good look at his hand and eyes. They had long fingers with pads at the tips, sort of like salamanders, and they don't have fingernails. Their skin is gray, but kind of like a powdery translucent gray. They had large heads with small necks, so small and thin it didn't make sense. Their arms and fingers were long and skinny too. I was in the chair with my head and jaw held by something so I didn't see their feet. I'd say the tallest probably stood about the height of my lowest rib, and for reference, I'm 5'10". The tube machine sucked out the food I ate earlier that day, and then was pulled out of me. I don't remember how I got there, but then I remembered being in a cage made of some kind of metal that reminded me of aluminum. In a room with curved walls. In front of me was a man who looked a lot like a human, talking to a gray person on a window that lit up a screen like a hologram. The man was tall and looked like a human, except that his skin was very white and his hair was blonde and platinum. He spoke with a gray person on the holo screen in a language I didn't understand. He wore a blue flight uniform of some kind. This man was obviously military of some sort judging by his uniform. The gray person spoke in a language that sounded like birds chirping. Once the call was over, the holo screen turned into a different display with symbols, and the man turned and walked to me. He crouched down and spoke to me in plain English and said to me, "Everything's gonna be fine. I'm going to get you out of here and take you home." I was so happy to hear that. He opened the cage, and next thing I know, I fell on top of my bed with my back hitting the mattress first. I immediately got out of bed right after I fell. Was this a real alien abduction or simply a horrible nightmare? Typically, I would think it was merely a bad dream, but the user describes extreme pain in his throat for days afterwards from the tube being forced into him. What was the source of this pain if it was simply a dream? Truly a strange encounter to contemplate. Number 1, the alien and the bassinet. Our final story is another from phantomsandmonsters.com about a woman who was asleep in bed next to her baby's bassinet before waking up and seeing something that would make any mother panic. The following is an excerpt from her account. "I turned over on my side, facing the bassinet, and noticed a bright light coming in between the window blinds. I thought out loud, is it morning already? The light was coming in between the blinds and it was so bright, but the rest of the room was dark. There was also a bright light on the wall next to the window, and I looked up to see where the light was coming from. To my horror, just above the bassinet was an alien's gray face. It was just the head, no upper body, legs, or arms. The head was dark in color, very round, ending in a pointed chin, and there was a small slit for a mouth. The nostrils were small, but the eyes were large and almond-shaped and very shiny black. It had some sort of glass lamp on the top of its head. The light on the wall was projected from the lamp. Then I noticed that the being was looking down at my baby daughter. Oh my god, I couldn't speak. My heart started pounding so hard that I started trembling uncontrollably. It saw me and realized I was looking at it. The being moved towards me and I started screaming and swinging my arms. I remember that I screamed out loud for it to leave. It floated from its original position above the bassinet to just above my face. I remember seeing this light blue fog build up in front of my face, and then in a dreamlike manner, I heard a cooing sound similar to mourning doves. I had the feeling that whoever was talking to me was stern and was telling me that it was for our own good. The woman then describes waking up with a sore spot on her head and the alien being gone without a trace. She insists it was not a dream and that she really saw an alien creature that she believes will one day return. For her sake, let us hope it was simply a dream.
Starting off this list in our number 5 spot, we have Project Grudge Report 13. Okay, so I've read quite a few different UFO sighting stories and stories of alleged alien abductions, and this is fully one of the most terrifying that I have ever heard of. So basically, the story starts off in March of 1956 when Air Force Sergeant Jonathan P. Lovett was assisting Major William Cunningham in the White Sands Missile Testing Grounds near Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. The pair were out searching for debris from a recent rocket test when Major Cunningham heard a loud scream. His first thought was that Sergeant Lovett had been bitten by a snake, so he went around to help aid his partner when he allegedly saw something he never expected. He recounted seeing the sergeant being dragged away by some sort of long serpentine arm that had wrapped around his legs. Whatever this creature was, it was connected to a hovering silver disc that was in the air about 15 feet away. The major stood there in horror as he watched this creature and the sergeant retreat into the craft, which then rose vertically into the sky. Of course, he radioed for help, and while he was taken to the hospital for observation, search teams were sent out immediately. It wouldn't happen until 3 days later that they would find the body of Sergeant Lovett, only 10 miles from the site where he was said to have disappeared from. The autopsy performed on him later also only raised more questions than answers, as his body was severely harmed. So of course there was an investigation that happened, and many people claim this investigation was detailed in a 600-page document labeled Project Grudge Report 13. But the problem with this is that no official information on Report 13 exists, and the US government denies its very existence. Though Grudge Reports 1 through 12 have been declassified, along with Report 14, no official mention or accounting of Report 13 exists, and the story solely relies on secondhand accounts of the horrible incident. In our number 4 spot today, we have the cigar-shaped UFO. Okay, so let's set the stage. It's 2:45 a.m. on July 24th, 1948, and there are 20 passengers aboard a twin-engine propeller plane that is at 5,000 feet, being flown from Houston to Atlanta by pilot Clarence S. Childs and co-pilot John B. Whitted. Out of the 20 passengers on board, 19 of them are asleep at these early morning hours, and everything seems to be going as per usual until it wasn't. The 2 pilots and the 1 passenger who was awake all witnessed the same thing about 20 miles southeast of Montgomery, Alabama. About a week after the incident, the pilot explained what he had seen by saying, quote, "It was clear there were no wings present, that it was powered by some jet or other type of power shooting flame from the rear some 50 feet. There were 2 rows of windows which indicated an upper and a lower deck, and from inside these windows a very bright light was glowing. Underneath the ship there was a blue glow of light. By his estimates, he watched the UFO for about 10 seconds before it completely vanished." The co-pilot gave a similar explanation and also added, quote, "The object was cigar-shaped and seemed to be about 100 feet in length. The fuselage appeared to be about 3 times the circumference of a B-29 fuselage. It had 2 rows of windows, an upper and a lower. The windows were very large and seemed square. They were white with light, which seemed to be caused by some type of combustion. I asked Captain Childs what we had just seen, and he said that he didn't know." Well, this is obviously all very strange and peculiar. What has driven UFO enthusiasts even more is the fact that this strange sighting was of course later investigated by the US government, but the results of that investigation have allegedly been mostly destroyed. Does that mean that they found something they aren't willing to share yet? Some believe that perhaps the pilots and the passenger witnessed a secret Soviet spy craft, while others believe it was definitely something of the extraterrestrial variety. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Lubbock incident. On August 25th, 1951, in Lubbock, Texas, a group of scientists from the Texas Technical College were all hanging out in the backyard of geology professor Dr. W.I. Robinson. They were all just chilling, enjoying each other's company, until around 9:20 p.m. when they saw something very strange. It was a V-shaped formation of 15 to 30 bluish-green lights passing overhead. They were completely confused over what it could be, but figured that the lights would likely reappear, which they did. About an hour later, the lights reappeared, and at this point, all of these scientists knew that they had witnessed something exceptionally interesting, but what was it? The scientists weren't the only ones to witness the lights either. About 350 miles away in Albuquerque, New Mexico, an employee of the Atomic Energy Commission's top secret Sandia Corporation, who had a high-level Q security clearance, had been been sitting outside with his wife, quote, gazing at the night sky, commenting on how beautiful it was, when both of them were startled at the sight of a huge airplane flying swiftly and silently over their home. On the aft edge of the wings, there were 6 to 8 pairs of soft, glowing bluish lights. There were more sightings as well, all reporting a similar thing. The group of scientists began investigating, tracking the lights, which they witnessed 12 more times. They measured the angle of the lights, they tracked the speed, and they attempted, unsuccessfully, to try and measure the UFO's altitude. Here's the deal with this though. The government did end up investigating, but the official explanation for these lights is the most cryptic message I've ever seen. It read, quote, I thought that the professor's lights might have been some kind of birds reflecting the light from mercury vapor streetlights, but I was wrong. They weren't birds. They weren't refracted light, but they weren't spaceships. The lights that the professor saw have been positively identified as a very commonplace and easily explainable natural phenomenon. I can't divulge exactly the way the answer was found because it is an interesting story of how a scientist set up complete instrumentation to track down the lights. Telling the story would lead to his identity, and in exchange for his story, I promised the man complete anonymity. Despite people claiming that the mystery has been solved, by this explanation, people are left with a lot more questions than answers. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Shag Harbor incident. This UFO encounter is often referred to as Canada's Roswell, so I was shocked that I hadn't heard of it before. Basically, this incident took place on October 4th, 1967, when an unknown object crashed into the water near Shag Harbor, which is a tiny town in Nova Scotia. There were at least 11 people who witnessed this object as it crashed, and many people claimed to have heard a whistling sound followed by a loud bang when the crash took place. The witnesses that claimed to have seen the UFO were all doing a bunch of different things at the time. One couple was just sitting on their porch, but the 2 witnesses that really get me are a flight pilot and a ship captain. On Air Canada Flight 305, First Officer Robert Ralph pointed out to Captain Pierre Charbonneau that there was something strange at the left side of the aircraft. They reported an object tracking along on a parallel course a few miles away and described it as a brilliantly lit rectangular object with a string of smaller lights trailing the object. Shortly after they first noticed it, there was a large but silent explosion near the unknown object, and then 2 minutes later there was a second explosion, but this one faded to a blue cloud. As for the ship captain, Captain Leo Howard Mercy, he saw 4 blips on his Deca radar that were totally stationary. This led to him looking up to the sky, and that is when he saw 4 bright objects sitting in a rectangular formation about 28 kilometers from the vessel's window. He wasn't the only one who saw it on board. The entire crew of nearly 20 fishermen stood on deck and watched. A man named Laurie Wickens was another one of the witnesses, and he and some of his friends ended up calling the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, because they saw a huge object floating in the Atlantic Ocean about 1,000 feet off of the shore. This is all super weird, and not only the RCMP, but also the Royal Canadian Navy and the Royal Canadian Air Force became involved in investigation, but nothing was ever recovered or found. But it was also revealed that all commercial, private, and military aircrafts along the eastern seaboard were accounted for, so what could have all these witnesses seen? Since they have never officially identified what it was in the official Government of Canada documents, it is listed as a UFO. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Westall incident. Taking it back to 1966, we have the largest mass UFO sighting in Australia that at the time was largely ignored. This incident took place when over 300 students and staff members of a school in Melbourne all witnessed multiple UFOs silently flying through the air before they landed in a nearby field. Well, there's been a ton of speculation about this incident in the many years it's been. One witness account stands out among the rest, and that is the account made by the science teacher from the school, Andrew Greenwood. He was alerted to the UFO event by a hysterical student, and when he went outside to see for himself, everything changed. Previously a skeptic of UFO stories, Andrew's mind was abruptly changed when he saw, as he described it, a round silver object about the size of a car with a metal rod sticking up in the air. He went on to explain that suddenly 5 planes came and surrounded the object, all while more people were gathering to watch. He called what happened next the most amazing flying he has ever seen, explaining that, quote, every time they got too close to the object it would slowly accelerate, then rapidly accelerate, and then move away from them and stop. Then they would take off after it again, and the same thing would happen. This went on for about 20 minutes before the mysterious object just vanished. As weird as this all was, what was almost weirder was what happened next. Firstly, the headmaster of the school is said to have tried to put a stop to anyone talking about the incident at all, threatening severe punishment to any student or staff who was caught speaking about it, and when the Royal Australian Air Force contacted him, he refused to talk to them at all about it. There have also been stories of witnesses getting visits from people warning them not to speak of the incident. Andrew explained, quote, when he asked the physical education teacher to describe what she had seen herself so that he could compare it with his own observation, she just wouldn't say anything. Another witness who did talk to Andrew and described what she had seen in great detail, just 30 minutes later refused to speak to him and wouldn't say a word. Was this because of the threats from the headmaster, or was something else going on here? This is definitely one strange UFO story that leaves behind a lot of questions.
Number 5. Build a UFO. In the 1989 interview that started these leaks, the claim sounded like Hollywood sci-fi. Months later though, when his identity was revealed, Bob said he worked at a secret facility that I'll talk more about later, where alien technology was being reverse engineered, meaning, taken apart to figure out how it worked and whether the Pentagon could duplicate it. Look, the premise seems a lot less absurd now. Bob said that his job was to help with the reverse engineering of one of 9 flying saucers, which he alleged were extraterrestrial in origin. He claims that one of the flying saucers, the one he coined the sport model, was manufactured out of a metallic substance similar in appearance and touch to liquid titanium. Bob said that the propulsion of the studied vehicle ran on an antimatter reactor and was fueled by the chemical element with atomic number 115, which once again, I'll touch on later, I promise. In a subsequent interview that November, Bob appeared unmasked and under his own name, where he claimed that his job interview for work at the facility was with contractor EG&G and that his employer was the United States Navy. Bob said the craft he was working on was dismantled, and the reactor he studied was topped by a sphere or semi-sphere which emitted a force field capable of repulsing human flesh. He further explained that the craft was split into 2 main levels. So the reactor was positioned at the center of the upper level, with an antenna extending to the top, surrounded by 3 gravity amplifiers. These were connected to gravity emitters on the lower level, which can rotate 180 degrees to output a gravity beam or anti-gravity wave. In 1989, Bob said the seeds of the saucer he saw were approximately tiny human-sized, and that he had seen alien cadavers of a corresponding size. He's mentioned that the main craft he worked on would aim its belly to the target, and then bring all of the amplifiers to power and fly off in that direction, with the belly or bottom forward. If that description of a spacecraft tilting sounds familiar, I'm assuming you're familiar with the gimbal UFO? So the Pentagon released the video back in 2017, where naval pilots encountered a fleet of the unknown craft off of the coast of Florida in 2015, and have since had dozens of similar encounters. So in that specific video, there's a mechanistic turn against the wind without deceleration, which means a craft without rotors, heat signatures, tail fins, and no tail number, and it was moving in a way that is counterintuitive to aeronautics. So when Bob saw that video, he said it had to be a gravity-propelled craft, which mimics the propulsion system that he described. So okay, if you don't believe me on that one, how about we look at another now famous UFO incident, the 2004 Tic Tac encounter. I've talked about this many times. So the Navy pilot who engaged the Tic Tac, Black Aces commander Dave Fravor, says he doesn't believe the astonishing craft was made on Earth and that the propulsion might be anti-gravity. So when Bob was shown the Tic Tac video for the first time, it immediately reminded him of the sport mode, which, like I said, that was his name for the craft stashed in the desert. And he says it's the exact same propulsion system. Former Pentagon intelligence officer Lou Elizondo was in charge of ATIP, the secret Pentagon study. He told the I-Team one goal of the project was to determine the physics of UFOs, how they can achieve the seemingly impossible. The military came to believe that the craft relied on special metamaterials, stuff that can't be made with known technology. And hey, Bob made similar claims decades ago and was ridiculed. So what do you know? Now the Pentagon's on the same page all of a sudden. Number 4, what is Area 51? So sure, today everybody knows that Area 51 is the common name of a highly classified United States Air Force facility within the Nevada Test and Training Range. As a remote detachment administered by Edwards Air Force Base, the facility is officially called Homey Airport or Groom Lake, depending on who you ask. Okay, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Don't tell me. I'm sure it'll come to me eventually. Oh, I got it. It's home to all things unknown, and lots of alien and UFO believers, such as myself, are pretty sure that that's where all the flying discs and more tend to be housed. It's commonly thought to support the development and testing of experimental aircraft and weapons systems. Now, it has never been declared a secret base, but all research and occurrences in Area 51 are top secret or sensitive compartmented information. So make of that what you will. The CIA only publicly acknowledged the base's existence on June 25th of 2013, following a Freedom of Information Act request filed in 1905 and declassified documents detailing its history and purpose. So, how does Bob play into all this? Well, we're going to go back to 1989 when he appeared in that interview with investigative reporter George Knapp on Las Vegas TV station Klaus under the pseudonym Dennis and with his face hidden to discuss his employment at S4, a subsidiary facility he claimed exists near the Nellis Air Force Base installation known as Area 51. And once again, this was back in 1989, before Area 51 was the common knowledge it is today. He claimed that said facility was adjacent to Papoose Lake, which is located south of the main Area 51 facility at Groom Lake. He claimed the site consisted of concealed aircraft hangars built into a mountainside. He said that while walking down a hallway at S4 once, he briefly glanced through a door window and saw what he interpreted as two men in lab coats facing down and talking to something with long arms. Now, he doesn't think he saw an actual alien, but speculated that he saw a doll used as a reference for the size of the alleged aliens. So everything I'm discussing today about Bob probably took place at that mysterious place out in the desert. Area 51 is also believed to house material recovered at Roswell, the study of their occupants, and the manufacturing of aircraft based on alien technology. And also might be a place to host meetings or joint undertakings with extraterrestrials. It tends to be where the development of exotic energy weapons for the Strategic Defense Initiative or other weapons programs happens, possibly where they're working on projects to do with weather control, time travel and teleportation technology, and exotic propulsion systems related to the Aurora program. So many of these tend to do with, underground facilities at Groom or Papoose Lake. So, the S4 location first talked about by Bob, which is 8.5 miles south and includes claims of a transcontinental underground railroad system and a disappearing airstrip named the Cheshire Airstrip, after Lewis Carroll's Cheshire Cat, which briefly appears when water is sprayed onto its camouflaged asphalt and engineering based on alien technology. Number 3. Helicopter hieroglyphs. Depictions of modern craft found in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs have been hailed as proof of time travel, and even an advanced alien civilization visiting our ancestors. For folks like us, hieroglyphs appearing to resemble planes and helicopters in artwork done thousands of years ago have been hailed as unequivocal proof that the ancient Egyptians were visited by beings who brought them advanced technology from the future, with many supporters of the theory saying if the ancient civilization was putting helicopters and modern spacecraft in their artwork, then they must have seen them or at least observed images of them, which makes sense to me. The helicopter hieroglyphs is a name given to part of an Egyptian hieroglyph carving from the temple of Seti I at Abydos. They've been interpreted as an out-of-place artifact depicting a helicopter as well as other examples of modern technology. The initial carving was made during the reign, like I said, of Seti I and translates to "He who repulses the 9 enemies of Egypt." It was later filled in with plaster and recarved during the reign of Ramesses II with the title "He who protects Egypt and overthrows the foreign countries." Over time, the plaster has eroded away, leaving both inscriptions partially visible and creating a palimpsest-like effect of overlapping hieroglyphs. As with all dates in ancient Egypt, the actual date of Seti's reign are unclear, and various historians propose different dates, with 1294 BC to 1279 BC and 1290 BC to 1279 BC being the most commonly used by scholars today. Back to the hieroglyphs. So the 3,000-year-old hieroglyphs found in the temple are said to depict a helicopter, plane, and futuristic aircraft among the usual, insects, symbols, and snakes. One popular theory, known as the ancient aliens theory, is that the advanced race who brought details of futuristic technology to the Egyptians were visitors from a far-flung, highly advanced planet, visiting to share their knowledge with the primitive communities here on Earth. The beliefs claim that these extraterrestrials were the ones behind the development of the pyramids, Stonehenge, and other famous monuments. And this wasn't the first, nor the last time I will be talking about that today. Steve Mera is a UFOologist who tours the country giving talks on the research he conducts. And at UFO conferences, he produces the helicopter hieroglyphs as part of the debate. During one specific talk in Warminster, Wiltshire, he pointed out the helicopter, describing how it has what looks like a rotor blade and a rudder, also possibly a wing. Look, they had to have the visual from somewhere. Just saying. Number 2, Stonehenge. So the mystery of Stonehenge has baffled historians for centuries. One of the never-ending questions about the ancient site is whether or not it contains hieroglyphics. And in 2015, a scientific paper was published by a mathematician, Dr. A.E. Zlobin, in the form of a diary. He discovered ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs in Stonehenge and determined the site as the solar Egyptian temple of the god Atum. However, there are several other theories that suggest that the site may have used to record messages or stories. One theory suggests the stones themselves may have been carved with hieroglyphics, and that theory is based on the fact that many other sites, such as the pyramids of Egypt, were also decorated with such writing. Another theory suggests that the stones may have been used as a giant sundial, with the hieroglyphics acting as a way to record the movements of the sun. So this theory is supported by the fact that Stonehenge is aligned with the movements of the sun and moon. Whatever the true purpose of it is, it's clear that the site was of great importance to the ancient people who built it. Speaking of which, who who built that thing and why did they build it? Nabta Playa, as it is now known, is not easily accessible. It is thought that the stones are among the oldest astronomical alignments of megaliths in the world, and were built by a nomadic society in the early centuries of Stonehenge, and it's possible that they were built by an ancient civilization. Also, the tomb nearby was also only filled with only cattle bones, which is really unusual. My theory, and ergo why it made today's list, is that the anomalies point more towards alien advanced communication instead of isolated humans. Also, there haven't really been signs of human life, only cattle like I mentioned before, which supports my theory, and not to sound like a broken record today, but if there's something I can't leave out, where there are hieroglyphs, there are things we as humans can't explain. It furthers my theory that one of the languages aliens can communicate with, and the reason they don't visit more now compared to in history, is because of how much we no longer communicate with them now that it's not a regularly used language. Stonehenge is thought to have been formed between the ancient Neolithic and Bronze Ages, while the pyramids are thought to have formed during the Iron Age. For those who need more precision, Stonehenge is thought to be around 3,100 years old, while the pyramids are thought to be around 4,500 years old. Just for reference. Number 1, an alien mummy. Another sign that excites supporters of the claim that ancient Egypt was visited by aliens is a mummy discovered in a small pyramid near Senusret II's pyramid. Now, the structure of its skeleton doesn't really resemble that of a human's body. It's a skeletal conundrum made up of perplexing features. So it's only 6 inches tall, but initial estimates of the age of the bones were consistent with someone in the single digits of age. But the face is what looks especially different. The long angular skull with slanted eye sockets and fewer than normal ribs, 10 pairs rather than the normal 12, only really deepen the mystery. The mummy was discovered by Dr. Victor Lubeck, a retired professor from the University of Pennsylvania. The remains were found surrounded by unusual objects that could not be identified. An anonymous source claimed that the mummy does not originate from Earth, and that it has greatly troubled Egyptian authorities, who want to keep it a secret. According to the source, in life the mummy served as an advisor to the pharaoh Osirhunet. Governments refuse to admit the implications that such a discovery has for human history, but they still fail to provide the world with a significant explanation for it. When I tried to learn more about this mummy, most of the links and resources had randomly gone missing and weren't archived anywhere, which tends to be par for the course when the government wants to cover up the truth about anything to do with aliens. I swear one of these days I'm just gonna go missing, and the government will be to blame.